Hello everyone, before the start of the video I would like to request you all to like, subscribe, that's it, thank you and enjoy. 1. The God Who Found a Treasure. Chapter 1. The God Who Found a Treasure. Name: Arthur Pendragon. Race: human. Why are you in Orario? To make a living. Hearing this somewhat casual reply, Hashanah, the senior adventurer in charge of recording information, put down her pen and paper and looked up, scrutinizing the young man before her. Silver hair and silver eyes, his demeanor was too clean to have just arrived from a long journey, and the black and white uniform he wore was a strange style she had never seen before. This young man doesn't look strong enough. Hashanah shook her head to herself, a hint of undetectable pity flashing in her eyes, but still offered advice as someone experienced. To make a living in Orario, you need a skill. We are too ordinary compared to other races. Good luck to you. I see, thank you for the reminder. Arthur calmly accepted her good intentions, nodded in acknowledgement, and then strode deeper into the city gate. Stepping into the city, it was as if he passed through an invisible barrier, and a deafening wave of sound washed over him. The clamor fiercely assaulted Arthur's eardrums, revealing the prosperity and vitality of this labyrinthine city to him without reservation. Fresh fruit that even picky elves rave about. Don't walk by, don't miss it. Clothing designed specifically for beastmen friends, full range of styles, durable and hardwearing. To all the Amazons, our shop has just received a batch of exquisite equipment forged by dwarf masters. Won't you come and take a look? Delicious fried potato balls, the best snack on North Street. Only 30 valis for one serving. Names that only existed in stories or fantasies now exploded vibrantly in his ears. Arthur's eyes sparkled with curiosity as he looked around at all the bizarre and colorful sights with great interest. To him, every corner here was filled with unprecedented novelty. Phoo! A faint but displeased whimper emerged from Arthur's collar, startling him into quickly looking down and gently stroking the restless little creature with his fingertips. Shish, just a little longer. We know nothing about this place. It would be bad if people mistook you for a rare monster. Phoo! Arthur skillfully weaved through the shoulder-to-shoulder crowd, explaining in a low voice to his caller. To quickly understand the situation, a bookstore is a good choice, the information is comprehensive and reliable. Of course, places like taverns, where all sorts of people gather, can also provide a lot of rumors. I personally prefer a bookstore. Phoo! Are you hungry? But we don't have a single coin right now. Phoo! The little creature's voice immediately wilted, filled with disappointment. Arthur touched his own equally empty stomach and sighed helplessly. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a dozen peculiar stones that shimmered with a faint blue glow, then pouted. I wonder if these things can be exchanged for some money. We'll try anything, go find a place and give it a shot. The benevolent mistress, Loki, the red-haired goddess, slightly tipsy and unsteady on her feet, stumbled to her feet. She grumpily brushed the dust from her clothes, still indignantly complaining about the violent treatment she had just received. Mia Mama's temper is getting worse and worse. I just wanted to get along with the young and sweet waitresses. What did I do wrong? I wonder where Ice and the others are on their expedition. How annoying. I'm so bored. Why can't I find any fun lately? Phoo! Loki repeated the strange, never before heard cry, and with bleary, drunken eyes, she craned her neck to look towards the secluded alley beside the tavern. The first thing that entered her sight was a peculiar creature squatting on the ground. Its fur was snow white, so pure it had no trace of dirt, resembling both a fox dog and a squirrel. In stark contrast to this pure little beast were 3 adventurers lying on the ground, twitching, bruised, and swollen, and standing in front of them, slowly stretching his wrists, was the silver-haired young man, Arthur. Hey! Don't play dead on the ground. I haven't finished asking my questions. Private fights between familia will be severely punished by the guild. Aren't you afraid of getting into trouble? The one who started it really has the nerve to say that. Arthur chuckled, a hint of mockery in his tone. Don't worry about me, I haven't joined a familia yet. As a sharp-nosed goddess of mischief who loved chaos, Loki was instantly intrigued by this unexpected scene. Moreover, she had some recollection of the 3 unfortunate individuals on the ground. These few had also been drinking and bragging at the benevolent mistress earlier, seemingly celebrating their captain's promotion to level 2. But they drank too much and lost control, insisting on causing trouble, and were thrown out by the robust female proprietress before she was. A level 2 with 2 level 1s, easily taken down by a young punk who hasn't even joined a familia yet. Loki's narrow eyes narrowed into 2 crescent moons, an inscrutable divine intent flickering in their depths. She swung her vermilion ponytail and, with seemingly casual but actually precise steps, swayed into the alley. "Kid, I really like you. Do you want to join my familia?" Arthur had actually noticed the red-haired woman observing them earlier. He turned his head, scrutinizing the goddess who exuded an air of impropriety and unreliability from head to toe, and directly laid out his condition. "I don't like being bound by rules. Do you dare to have a member like that?" Upon hearing this, Loki's drunkenness largely dissipated, and then a wicked smile spread across her lips. "Interesting. Who do you think I am? I, Loki, don't care for those who always follow the rules." Loki. Arthur was startled, discreetly observing the goddess before him, who, though of average build, was indeed female. "She's a woman. Twilight Manor, the headquarters of the Loki familia. With the main force deep in the dungeon on an expedition, the vast hall seemed cold and deserted, with only a few figures moving about. In the cluttered living room, Loki casually tossed the items from a chair aside, gesturing for Arthur and Fufu to follow her in. "So, you just arrived in Orario today, and you knew nothing about familia or the divine blessing before?" Arthur, who was feeding Fufu biscuits, nodded and then shook his head. "I just arrived, but I've heard some rumors along the way." According to Arthur's understanding, a familia was a developmental power structure centered around a deity, engaging in activities such as trade, farming, and exploration. The divine blessing, on the other hand, was power bestowed by deities, allowing people to break their limits and continuously grow stronger. Arthur took off his shirt, lay prone on the cool chair back, turned his head to Loki, and asked the question he cared about most. "Loki, how much stronger will I become after receiving the blessing?" "I say, kid, you're not treating my blessing like some instant, powerful buff, are you? Isn't it?" Hearing Arthur's retort, Loki shook her head, unperturbed, and casually explained. "Completely wrong. The blessing is more like a growth accelerator that we engrave into our children's bodies." Arthur's face was full of confusion. "Accelerator?" Loki took a thin needle from the table, pricked her finger, and continued to explain. "The gods unanimously believe that the children of the lower world possess infinite potential, and the blessing is to guide this potential out, acting as an accelerator for growth." Saying this, Loki dripped her divine blood onto Arthur's back and began to engrave the blessing pattern. Using the blood of a god as a medium, the potential within you will manifest in the form of sacred script. It represents your life up to this point and will also reflect your deepest desires. Arthur was now oblivious to the cool sensation on his back. Loki's explanation of the blessing caused him to fall into a brief trance. His thoughts uncontrollably drifted back to that white fortress, Chaldea, perpetually covered in ice and snow, isolated from the world. Life, desires, potential. Boom! A chaotic, almost uncontrollable magical storm erupted suddenly around Arthur without warning. The strong airflow instantly swept through the entire room. Loki, who had just finished engraving the blessing, was caught off guard and sent tumbling like a gourd, crashing directly into the conference table, startling Fufu into bristling. The wicked goddess had no time to mind the pain, her gaze fixed on the sacred script that had just formed on Arthur's back, radiating an unprecedented light. Shock, disbelief, ecstasy. All sorts of emotions flashed across her face, finally transforming into an uncontrollable, crazed smile. Such a thing actually exists. This time, I've really struck gold. Hi, this is my first fan FIC after I decided to take a break, so don't expect too much, but I promise this will be a long novel. The creator 223 creators, thoughts. 7 comments 0 vote. 2. The light of the stars is beginning to show its brilliance. Chapter 2. The light of the stars, showing its brilliance for the first time. Arthur Pendragon, LV.1, Strength, I0. Endurance, I0. Dexterity, I0. Agility, I0. Magic, I0. Right pointing arrow I1. Magic, Wind of the King, imbues magic, ultra-short aria. Envelops weapons in wind to boost attack power and accuracy, or releases wind pressure for a piercing ranged attack. Aria, invisible air, Wind King Hammer. Star Crystal. Permanent magic, can be activated at any time, restrictions being released. Greatly boosts attack power, defense, and recovery. The strongest fantasy, a wisp of starlight. Skills. Symbol of the red dragon. Greatly boosts magic resistance. Greatly boosts conscious perception. Possesses the bloodline factor of the strongest fantasy species, generating endless magic simply by breathing. Eternal blessing of the star spirit. Greatly boosts environmental adaptability. Greatly boosts personal luck. A blessing from the Earth Mother and primates, praying for the holder to never fall into disaster. Brilliant journey. Number of opened gates, 0. Invites you to cross dimensional gates and traverse the unknown in infinity. Arthur slowly walked out of the living room, holding the parchment Loki had translated, feeling the faint but real new power within his body. According to her introduction, level, basic abilities, magic, and skills are the fixed components that make up the status. As a product of systematic planning by the gods over thousands of years, they can effectively reflect the children's growth progress. Level, stats, magic, skills. It feels a bit like the online games mentioned in the data. Fufu, carat omega carat. Fufu lightly jumped onto his shoulder, peering at the parchment, seemingly curious about the content written on it. Arthur raised his hand and scratched Fufu's chin, chuckling as he held up the parchment closer to her. If those madmen in the magical world knew that God's grace could awaken magic, their expressions would surely be interesting. Fufu comfortably squinted her beast eyes and raised her chin, instantly losing the slight interest she had in the parchment. Seeing the little one lose interest, Arthur shook his head helplessly, extinguishing the trivial desire to share in his heart. He folded the parchment and put it into his pocket, then turned his head to look at the towering gray-white tower in the city center. Tower of Babel, which unites all human races in the world. It's a city built above a dungeon full of monsters. Isn't such a building a bit too high profile? Actually, Arthur had only just learned from Loki that Warario is a city that suppresses an underground demon's den. Before the gods descended and humans had not yet received grace, monsters from the dungeon brazenly invaded the surface. Later, the gods, yearning for entertainment, descended to the lower world, and humans, with the power of grace, sounded the horn of counterattack, establishing a fortress city surrounding the dungeon entrance. Over time, that fortress gathered the gods and the most elite adventurers, gradually developing into the world's #1 labyrinth city, Warario. Thinking of this, Arthur's eyes flashed with unconcealed excitement and curiosity. Not only various fantasy races and gods, but even the evil monsters opposing them are ready. I absolutely love it here. Let's go, Fu, let our adventure begin. Fu. Thump, thump, thump. Arthur's footsteps echoed in the empty cave. The dungeon, at this moment, was as quiet as a graveyard. As a literal underground labyrinth, it had tunnels extending in all directions. Even adventurers accustomed to battle could easily get lost without a map. Arthur flipped through the general handbook issued by the guild. Let me see, the common monster on the first floor is a kobold. That's strange, dog people are a beast race, but kobolds are monsters. What's the difference between them? The dungeon answered his question without reservation. Splat, splat, accompanied by the eerie sound of breaking walls, one by one, short kobolds with sharp fangs and claws and blood-red pupils jumped out. Yaa! The kobold closest to Arthur let out an incomprehensible roar, then crouched on all fours and leapt, swinging its claws. For an ordinary person who had just become an adventurer, suddenly being attacked by a monster would inevitably cause panic, and some timid adventurers might even run away. However, for Arthur, combat was just routine. He calmly closed the handbook, and a circuit-like glow spread from his hands and feet, before he slammed a punch into the kobold's face before its claws could land. The powerful force directly blew up the kobold, its remaining body falling limply and slowly turning into ashes. This violent scene made the remaining kobolds come to an emergency stop, only daring to let out threatening growls at Arthur from a distance. Despite being surrounded by monsters, Arthur seemed oblivious, clenching his fist, completely disregarding these kobolds. The effect of reinforcement magic has increased by about 60% compared to before, proving that the initial grace also has a bonus effect on physical functions. Next, let's test the magic awakened by grace. Yaa, X4. Evidently, the kobolds' patience was limited, and driven by their malevolence, they chose to gang up and attack Arthur. Clang! Amidst a shower of golden sparks, Arthur, holding a broad-bladed longsword, swept through the air. The blade hadn't even been drawn from its sheath, yet it had already cut down all the kobolds. Bang! X4. The platinum longsword inflicted almost crushing damage on the kobolds. They exploded into ashes before they even had a chance to hit the ground. Question mark. Arthur quickly raised the platinum longsword to his eyes, his expression surprised as he examined his magic. So sharp, it hasn't even been unsheathed. Actually, when he first received grace, he already had a basic understanding of the two awakened magics. Wind of the King was similar to a spell for elemental combat. Star Crystal, on the other hand, was a summonable longsword weapon. Arthur had not anticipated the longsword being so sharp, all because Loki's translation was so outrageous. The strongest fantasy, a wisp of starlight. Anyone reading such a description would surely take it as an exaggerated embellishment. Click. Arthur raised his hand and tried to draw the longsword, but a metallic biting sound came from the sheath, preventing his next action. I see, this is what, restrictions being released, means, the true name. Fu. At this moment, the 5 magic stones that had fallen to the ground caught Fu's attention, and she patted her owner's cheek. Arthur stopped examining the platinum longsword and frowned. Buy fried potato balls. Actually, I'd rather save some money to buy armor. Fufu was displeased. Fufu raised her paw. Ow, 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 don't pull my hair. Alright, I'll buy you fried potato balls. Arthur quickly bent down, picked up the 5 magic stones, and put them away, feeling exhausted by his pampered pet. Looking at the walls that had returned to their original state, he pondered for a moment, then took out the general handbook from his pocket again to check. Based on my physical functions, the monsters on the first floor won't provide any training. It seems I'll have to go deeper. He closed the handbook, his gaze fixed on the deeper, darker passages of the dungeon. That was where true danger and opportunity coexisted, and it better matched his expectations for adventure. 7 comments 0 vote. 3. It's common sense to rely on trucks to travel to another world. Chapter 3. It's common sense to travel to another world by truck. Dungeon, 10th floor. Unlike the gloomy and cramped first floor, this place was filled with mist, a gray expanse that seemed to swallow all light and sound. However, in this boundless gray mist, brilliant golden light flashed and extinguished like a meteor, each flicker accompanied by the silent collapse of a fat orc. Arthur's figure moved freely through the monster horde, his expression composed, even having the leisure to be distracted. Strength, endurance, dexterity, agility, and magic are the 5 most direct indicators of growth in ability scores. Based on proficiency, there are 10 stages from I to S. If an adventurer wants to improve a certain item, they must engage in related training. To increase strength, attack. To increase endurance, take damage. To increase magic, cast spells. And so on. The more frequently a certain type of action is performed, the more growth the corresponding item receives. That's the theory, Arthur said. Arthur spun and swung his sword, instantly cleaving 2 rushing orcs. He lightly tapped his toes, gracefully retreating and creating distance from the remaining monsters. But you small fries aren't even good enough to warm me up. Wind King Hammer, strike air. The wind pressure coiling around his sword instantly condensed, and with a swing of his arm, it transformed into an invisible yet violent magic shockwave, erupting with force. The sluggish orcs were like hitting an invisible meat grinder, turning into ash before they could even scream, swept away by the shockwave into the distance. Arthur shook off the lingering magic storm from his sword, looking at the magic stones and dropped materials scattered on the ground, somewhat annoyed as he scratched his hair. There's already a monster killing, leveling up, and material dropping phase, but no auto pickup after battle. That's too inconvenient. Fu, perched on his shoulder, tilted its head. Yes, I know this isn't a game, it just feels like collecting materials is a bit of a waste of time. Arthur bent down and began to meticulously search, making sure no spoils of war were missed. According to the general handbook, adventurers are not allowed to discard magic stones and dropped materials at will. If discovered, the entire familia will be penalized. Actually, he could understand the guild's painstaking efforts. After all, these materials could be exchanged for money. Even scraps casually discarded by high-level adventurers could become the fuse for lower-level adventurers' struggles. After double-checking that nothing was missed, Arthur turned and headed back towards the entrance to the 9th floor. There was no choice. The map provided by the guild for LV1 adventurers only went up to the 10th floor, so his dungeon debut could only stop here. At sunset, The plaza beneath Tower of Babel was bustling with noise. Adventurers who had finished a day of exploration flocked to the guild's counter, exchanging magic stones and materials for clinking valise. "Yo, old Bill, how did you end up back on the surface?" "Nonsense. He must have conned some sucker on the 18th floor and is preparing to return to his main base to lie low." "Go to hell. I'm a famously conscientious merchant on the 18th floor. You rotten old man are very bad. Can 18th floor and conscientious even be said together?" Arthur quietly stood in line, listening to the surrounding adventurers recount their daily experiences and gains, extracting useful information for himself. From their words, it seemed there were shops opened by adventurers on the 18th floor. That was interesting. To dare to conduct transactions in a dungeon full of monsters, could it be that some high-level adventurers were stationed there? As for conscientiousness, after all, it was a shop set up on the front lines of battle. Taking advantage of the situation was normal. Just then, a needle-like chill suddenly crawled up Arthur's spine, as if he had been targeted by a bony-eating beast. He casually scanned his surroundings. The crowd was bustling, yet no gaze carried obvious malice. However, Fufu, who had been quietly perched on his shoulder, suddenly raised its head, its ears twitching vigilantly. Its gaze penetrated through layers of obstruction, directly to the very top of Tower of Babel. There, a god, oblivious to the consequences, had set her eyes on an existence that absolutely could not be touched. Snap. A priceless wine glass slipped from her hand and shattered, the crimson liquid instantly staining the pristine white carpet. Freya, the silver-haired goddess renowned for her beauty and charm, was now pale with fright, stumbling backward and collapsing onto the cold floor, her delicate body trembling uncontrollably. What was that just now?" Her voice was filled with uncontrollable terror, and cold sweat dripped from her temples. As a goddess, she possessed a pair of special eyes that could see through the surface of things to the soul's radiance of the children of the lower world. Just now, Freya was, as usual, choosing a child she liked, but just as she discovered a youth whose soul shone like a star. What she saw in an instant was no longer the youth, but a terrifying beast shadow capable of destroying the world. Just a fleeting glance, and the divine instinct was screaming frantically. Freya was scared. That tremor from the depths of her soul made her instantly understand. To dare to lay a hand on that youth, there was only one outcome: annihilation. Even if she possessed one of Orario's strongest familia, even if she was a high and mighty god, she could not resist that power in the slightest. How cruel, Freya murmured bitterly, her face devoid of its usual allure, only the pallor of one who had narrowly escaped death. Such an unprecedentedly dazzling soul, yet even a god has no right to covet it. She took several deep breaths, barely suppressing her palpitations, and walked to the table to press a button. Soon, a burly, pigman strongman with short, earthy yellow hair quickly entered the room. Ottar, the juggernaut, bowed respectfully and said in a deep voice, "Lady Freya, please give your command." Ottar. Freya's voice still carried a trace of an almost imperceptible tremor. "Go and investigate information about a child. Remember, the most important point. Please instruct. Absolutely. Do not provoke any hostility from that child." Twilight Manor. Arthur looked helplessly at the tightly closed door, wondering if the frantic goddess had calmed down yet. Thump thump thump. "Come in, kid, I didn't lock the door." Arthur pushed the door open, and the sight before him made his mouth twitch. Loki, with a messy bird's nest of hair, held two bamboo skewers in her hands, her eyes unfocused, looking exactly like a patient who had just escaped from a mental asylum. Did you really have to make yourself look like this?" Loki suddenly jolted, raising the bamboo skewers like holy swords and roaring. "What the hell do you know, kid? I'm a god who sealed my powers and descended to the lower world for entertainment. With a god-given opportunity like traversing another world right before me, how can I stay calm?" Arthur spread his hands helplessly, explaining patiently. "So, didn't I tell you, brilliant journey can't be activated at all, so it's meaningless for you to dwell on this." "I don't believe it." Loki slammed the table, making a deafening sound. "Didn't you come here like this, kid? You must have a way to go to another world." Arthur and Fufu on his shoulder exchanged glances, then he shrugged rather shamelessly. "If you also experience an explosion, maybe you really will have a chance to travel to another world." Upon hearing this, Loki immediately put on an expression that said, "I'm well read, don't lie to me, and pouted. An explosion. Don't people usually rely on trucks to travel to other worlds? Arthur raised a hand to his forehead, weakly retorting. That's purely a stereotype. Quickly apologized to those authors who racked their brains designing transmigration plots. Loki snorted disdainfully, casually tossing aside the bamboo skewers labeled, "Go," and "Don't go," and beckoned to Arthur. I'm done messing around with you, kid. Come over here, sit down, and take off your clothes. Let me get a good look. What's the quality of this otherworlder really like? 4. The Minotaur is more suitable for the maze. Chapter 4. The Minotaur is more suitable for the maze. Arthur Pendragon, LV.1, Strength, I0 right pointing arrow F, 324. Endurance, I0 right pointing arrow I, 74. Dexterity, I0 right pointing arrow G, 217. Agility, I0 right pointing arrow G, 222. Magic, I1 right pointing arrow E, 415. Magic. Skills. Loki. Degree D degree. Having barely suppressed her exploding curiosity, the evil god once again wore a mask of agony, even feeling the urge to flip the table. No other reason than Arthur's absurdly fast growth rate. He just explored the dungeon for one day and accumulated over 1,200 proficiency points. No, considering the time he wasted in the morning, he didn't even spend a full day in the dungeon. Hey, kid, spill it. Are you really human, not some monster in human skin? Arthur turned his head subtly, giving Loki a sidelong glance, and replied calmly. Based on physiological structure, I am indeed human. Loki shook the freshly translated parchment in her hand, exclaiming in wonder. Ho, if everyone from another world is like you, then we absolutely must go there and broaden our horizons. Arthur took the parchment and scanned it, his brows slightly furrowed with a hint of confusion. Even magic, which increased the fastest, only reached E rank. What are you saying? Listen to yourself. Is that even human language? Only E rank. If other adventurers heard that, they'd definitely cry on the spot. Loki pulled out a wine bottle from somewhere, chugged a few gulps, and then began to educate Arthur on adventurer common sense. Blessings indeed had the effect of accelerating growth, and adventurers did gain proficiency through frequent training. But everything is afraid of a but. It was never easy for an adventurer to improve their ability scores. Normally, someone who could raise their ability scores by dozens of points in a short time was already a rare genius that various familias would fight over. Moreover, the later the stage, the slower the ability scores increased. Even her most special sword princess, when she first received her blessing, didn't have such a monstrous growth rate as Arthur. Something's not right. No matter how strong this kid is, even if he can brute force his way through the 10th floor alone, he shouldn't have such an exaggerated increase. This isn't just strength gained from training, it's more like, the divine blood has awakened some dormant potential within him. Loki habitually narrowed her eyes, then took another large gulp of wine, waving her hand dismissively. Forget it, our familia is full of children with unspeakable secrets, you're just one more. Arthur was slightly taken aback. He had already prepared an explanation, but he didn't expect Loki to let go of the questioning so readily. This evil god from Norse mythology seemed to be quite different from the image he had in mind. I need a map of the floors beyond the 10th, preferably extending to the 18th floor. I heard there are adventurer shops there, and I'm very interested. Hearing Arthur's request, Loki's face instantly fell, showing a troubled expression. A map? Although her familia was one of Orario's 2 kings, she, as a chief god, had always been a hands-off manager, never bothering with the trivialities of dungeon exploration. Now that Finn, the captain responsible for coordinating everything, had gone on an expedition with the main force, where was she supposed to find a map? That's right, Loki suddenly slapped her thigh and pointed to a building on the side of Twilight Manor. There, that's our library. It's filled with years of exploration records and intelligence from the familia. Whether it's maps or monster data, whatever you want, it's there. Go find it yourself. Understood. Arthur nodded, put away the parchment, and turned to walk towards the library. But just as he was about to step out the door, his steps suddenly halted, and he turned his head to look at the deity who was still drinking to drown her sorrows. Loki, is there some kind of surveillance equipment on top of Tower of Babel? When I came back this evening, I felt a gaze, very uncomfortable, like someone was scrutinizing me from head to toe. Surveillance. A gaze. Loki heard this, put down her wine bottle, and her drunken expression instantly faded. She nodded and said, I probably know what's going on. Don't worry, kid, just leave it to me. After Arthur's figure disappeared outside the door, Loki roughly wiped her mouth, a cunning smile, completely different from her usual playful grin and tinged with a hint of ruthlessness, appearing on her face. It seems that lovesick fool has set her sights on him. Old friend, don't force me to turn against you. After finding the necessary information from the vast sea of documents in the library, Arthur once again stepped into the deep dungeon, bathed in the faint morning light. This time, his target was directly the safe floor in the middle levels, the 18th floor. Yes, a safe floor. After carefully reviewing the information, Arthur realized he had been too presumptuous before. The dungeon was not dangerous everywhere. On specific floors, such as the 18th floor, monsters would not spawn, much like a safe zone in a game. Because of this, daring adventurers had even set up shops there, forming a small supply point. Running into the middle levels on the second day of receiving a blessing, other people would definitely think an adventurer like me is courting death, right? The self-deprecating words had barely left his mouth when they were scattered by the turbulent airflow surging from the passage ahead. Arthur, enveloped in a torrent of magic, was like a cannonball, hurtling along the remembered route through the underground tunnels. This was a small trick he had recently mastered, unleashing the immense magic within his body without reservation, transforming it into a brutal propulsive force. This power not only greatly increased his strength and speed but also effectively reduced damage, and even allowed him to briefly hover or even fly. Arthur's blatant and undisguised method of travel naturally acted like a lighthouse in the night, instantly attracting the attention of countless monsters. In the rock cave passage of the 17th floor, heavy breathing rose and fell, like powerful drumbeats against the rock walls. Shadows wriggled, and one after another, muscular, grotesque bull-headed monsters slowly emerged, their bronze-hard skin reflecting a cold sheen under the phosphorescent light. Minotaur, one of the representative monsters of the dungeon's middle levels, known for its immense strength and tough defense. Arthur stopped, his right hand forming a virtual grip, and a platinum longsword, shimmering with a faint glow, instantly materialized. He observed with interest the group of monsters before him, agitated by his intrusion. Minotaurs in a labyrinth. I didn't expect that after coming to this world, it would be these monsters that most closely matched their mythological descriptions. Muoa, times N. They couldn't understand human language, but that didn't prevent these fierce bulls from sensing the provocation and threat emanating from the presence before them. They let out thunderous roars one after another, muscles bulging, and abruptly lowered their heads, their thick hind hooves vigorously stomping the rocky ground, kicking up gravel and dust. The Minotaurs transformed into streaks of wild shadows, launching a group charge at Arthur. The scene briefly reminded him of the kobolds he had once faced, equally fearless of death. Sorry, I'm not in the mood to play with you all right now. Wind King Hammer. Arthur didn't even dodge. Instead, with an even more violent and fierce demeanor than the monsters, he swung his longsword, which was wreathed in invisible wind pressure. The slash tore through the air with a sharp whistle, instantly pulverizing the charging minotaurs and the rocky ground beneath their feet into a shower of fragments. However, this crushing instant kill seemed to trigger some taboo, thoroughly enraging the dungeon itself. Thump thump. First, a dull, powerful sound, like the beating of a giant heart, suddenly echoed throughout the entire rock cave. Immediately after, the sound of cracking walls erupted like popping beans. The rock cave was crumbling and wriggling on all sides. More minotaurs were being born and taking shape in droves, at an unprecedented rate. Their crimson eyes instantly locked onto Arthur, filled with savagery and a desire for destruction. The dungeon had instantly spawned a far greater than usual number of powerful monsters. This was a desperate death trap capable of instantly engulfing and crushing any experienced adventurer party. It was a veritable monster feast. Yet, faced with this terrifying scene that made one involuntarily feel awe, Arthur showed no trace of fear. Instead, he curved his lips, his eyes gleaming with unprecedented excitement. What, does the dungeon have a temper too? Since you're all so enthusiastic, I'll stay and have a good time with you. 5. One man slaughtered everyone. Poor floor owner. Chapter 5. One man slaughters. Poor floor owner. The path to the deepest part of the 17th floor was dark and long, and two teams of fully armed adventurers were steadily advancing into this abyss. Their target was clear: the floor boss of the 17th floor, Goliath. Because they were led by an LV-4 advanced adventurer, the team's overall atmosphere was relaxed, with sounds of monster clearing and laughter as they collected their spoils. "You guys just don't know. Yesterday, someone actually dared to say I was heartless." A rough voice echoed through the tunnel, belonging to Old Bill, who looked indignant. "Those bastards don't even bother to find out who else is willing to deal with floor bosses for rookies. Let's be frank, if he hadn't blocked your path to wealth, would an old geezer like you organize people to deal with Goliath?" The adventurers in the team had known Old Bill for a long time and mercilessly exposed his motives. Not only that, after all, the drop materials from the floor boss are also very attractive. Hearing his companions repeatedly tease him, Old Bill's ox eyes widened, and he was about to speak, ready to display the demeanor of a Zon king. "Ooh, AOW. However, a loud roar came from the depths of the rocky cave, its sound waves shaking dust from the walls. The adventurers, who had been chatting and laughing, now looked solemn, instinctively gripping their weapons and looking warily at the advanced adventurer at the front of the team. "Captain, was that just?" The captain frowned, speculating. "It sounds like Goliath's voice, but..." Old Bill, standing nearby, suddenly slapped his thigh, his face showing an urgent, anxious expression. "It must be those treacherous merchants from the 18th floor who made the first move. Those impatient dogs." After Old Bill's words, the rest of the team also gradually became agitated. The two leading captains, realizing that things had changed, quickly urged everyone to quicken their pace and run towards the huge rocky cave where the floor boss was located. Floor bosses, officially called Labyrinth Solitary Kings by the Guild, are superlarge monsters that appear only after a certain period of time. They not only have a size far exceeding that of monsters on the same floor but are also specialized in certain aspects, with strength so great that adventurers of the same level are deterred. And the floor boss deep in the 17th floor, Goliath, is a durability specialized giant, whose defense alone is comparable to LV5. Normally, even with a well-coordinated team to subjugate it, it would take a considerable amount of time. Now, a group of greedy merchants would only disrupt everyone's plans and increase the difficulty of the subjugation. But when they breathlessly rushed into the rocky cave, the expected multi-team melee did not occur. What they saw was a breathtaking scene of only one adventurer clashing with the floor boss. The scene was a mess, the once flat ground shattered. Amidst the swirling dust, the floor boss, easily 8 or 9 meters tall, was in a sorry state, letting out a roar like a trapped beast. Its two proud, thick arms hung limply, swinging mechanically with its body. Covered in blood and deep, bone-deep wounds, the overflowing blood gradually stained the ground red, yet it still struggled with eyes full of ferocity. The giant charged again with a Doherty momentum, but the adventurer dodged it nimbly, moving around its body with ghostly footwork. His movements were as elegant as a bullfighter stirring the crowd's emotions. With a rumble, Goliath, overshooting its charge, crashed into the rock wall, the aftershock making the onlookers stumble. At the same time, the adventurer, longsword in hand, reappeared, adding 2 more wounds to the opponent's broad back. Very deep, but not fatal. "Ooh, AOW. The roar echoed through the rocky cave again. However, unlike last time, Old Bill and the others felt a hint of pity in the floor boss's voice. So strong, the opponent is completely toying with the floor boss. Disabling Goliath's attack methods but not killing it. Which family's advanced adventurer is messing around? Strange, I don't remember anyone like that. An adventurer who can solo a floor boss must at least be a seasoned LV4, right?" After hearing Old Bill and the others' speculations, the two captains exchanged glances, a bitter smile on their faces. LV4. Both of them were LV4 adventurers who had been promoted for some years, but if they were to solo Goliath, it would be tantamount to suicide. Not to mention that the opponent wasn't just gaining the upper hand, he was completely toying with Goliath like a wild bull. At the center of the battlefield, Goliath's attacks grew weaker and weaker. The ferocity spurred by pain was destined not to last, and with its blood almost drained, even its roars seemed weak. Heavy footsteps approached, and the giant leapt with its last bit of strength, intending to turn the tide with its size advantage. The shadow above Arthur gradually expanded, but it only made him shake his head and grumble again. How could such an attack possibly hit? Do the monsters in the dungeon not have brains? Magic power surged. Arthur accelerated by stepping on a gust of wind, his body instantly transforming into an afterimage and disappearing, leaving only Goliath heavily fallen into a pile of rubble. Dust flew, a gust of wind whistled past, and Arthur returned. He stopped at the back of Goliath's head, felt that the monster was already exhausted and unable to fight, and then casually plunged his sword into its skull. Bang! The massive giant turned into ashes and dissipated, leaving only a magic stone taller than a person, which dropped to the ground with a crisp clinking sound. Arthur casually dismissed his longsword and examined the ridiculously large magic stone in front of him, but the corner of his eye swept over Old Bill and the others standing at a distance, watching. Due to the guild's rules, adventurers were not allowed to steal kills, but if no one found out, that was another matter. "Which familia are you from?" Arthur's voice remained calm, breaking the eerie silence in the rocky cave. After hearing Arthur's question, Old Bill and the others quickly greeted him with smiling faces. "To answer you, sir, we are members of the Veneer familia." Arthur nodded knowingly, then took out 2 Minotaur magic stones from his pocket and pointed behind Old Bill and the others. "I'd like to buy a length of rope from you. Is this enough?" Old Bill's eyes darted around, and he quickly waved his hand, smiling cheerfully. "It's just some miscellaneous items, how can we charge you, sir?" Without waiting for Arthur to refuse, he turned around and nimbly pulled out a length of rope, throwing it over from a distance. Arthur took the rope, seemingly defenselessly turning to pack up Goliath's magic stone. Old Bill, on the other hand, subtly exchanged glances with the 2 captains, and the group, with great discretion, bypassed the central area and continued towards the 18th floor. Twilight Manor. Arthur pushed open the living room door once again. It was rare, this time, Loki wasn't drinking, because she was sprawled out on the conference table, snoring loudly. "Hey, hee, Aston, let me quickly see if you're developing healthily." Phew, ew. Both the person and the beast showed disdain, and it was easy to imagine what they were both dreaming about. Arthur stepped forward, grabbed the heavily drunk Loki, and shook her back and forth like a rag doll. "Hey, it's not dark yet, wake up. This isn't the time for daydreaming." Which fellow dares to disrespect a god? Loki, half asleep, flailed her arms and legs, and after barely opening her blurry eyes and seeing who was in front of her, she let out a big yawn. "You're back much earlier today than yesterday. Didn't you say you were going to check out the 18th floor?" Arthur smiled and shook his head, explaining, "I killed a large group of minotaurs and a floor boss. Too many magic stones, so I came back early to exchange them for money." After speaking, he untied 2 bulging money bags from his lower back, displaying the golden fauna inside. "You're bored staying at the base camp yourself. I'll treat you to steak for lunch." Loki suddenly looked up, her previously hazy expression instantly clearing, her eyes gleaming. "If you're talking about that, I'm not sleepy anymore." "All right, you're on the right track. Lead the way." Wait, Loki's leg, which had just started to move, suddenly stopped, her voice trembling with disbelief. "What did you just say you killed, alone?" 1 comment 0 vote. 6. Shrank. Great achievement accomplished. Chapter 6 Shrank. Great achievement accomplished. Arthur Pendragon. LV.1. Strength. F324, right pointing arrow A, 852. Durability. I, 74, right pointing arrow G, 235. Dexterity. G, 217, right pointing arrow B, 762. Agility. G, 222, right pointing arrow B, 784. Magic. E, 415, right pointing arrow S, 959. Magic. Skills. Loki swiftly stamped Arthur's latest ability scores onto parchment, handed it over, her face devoid of emotion. "Congratulations, your ability scores have improved significantly, your magic is even close to maxing out." Arthur took the parchment to examine it, giving Loki a sidelong glance. "That's all the reaction you have?" Loki grunted twice. "At this point, even if you leveled up tomorrow, I wouldn't be surprised." Arthur, out of habit, folded the parchment and put it away, muttering thoughtfully. Leveling up, huh? The large number of adventurers active in the dungeon were clearly divided into 2 categories. Lower-tier adventurers, consisting of LV1s, and upper-tier adventurers who had undergone a level ascension. Among them, LV2 was called a third-tier adventurer, while LV3 and 4 were second-tier adventurers. Only those who reached LV.5 or above were qualified to be called first-tier adventurers. For adventurers, inability to level up meant never getting ahead. For familias, without upper-tier adventurers to lead them, they could never truly grow strong. However, for an adventurer to level up, two prerequisites had to be met. First, at least one of their basic abilities had to be raised to stage D. Second, they needed to acquire advanced experience points far exceeding daily training, i.e., a great feat. Forging powerful divine weapons, developing groundbreaking inventions, defeating formidable opponents far stronger than oneself, undergoing life or death adventures, and so on. All such accomplishments, feats astonishing enough to make even the gods marvel, could be called great feats. Inventions, defeating strong enemies, life or death adventures. I feel like adventures suit me best. Hearing Arthur's words, Loki waved a lazy hand. You don't need to worry about that. A LV.1 rookie running into a monster feast, encountering a floor boss, and then returning alive and in one piece, if that's not a great feat, then no one else should expect to level up. Arthur's eyes lit up. You mean, I can level up now? Loki scratched her head, uncharacteristically explaining carefully. Theoretically, yes, but your situation is a bit special. You've accumulated enough great feats for a level up, but you definitely haven't fully explored your potential at LV.1 yet, so. Arthur instantly understood. You want me to fully tap into my current stage's potential first. Loki agreed. You should also know that basic abilities reset after leveling up, but the ability points you painstakingly trained before don't just disappear, they convert into hidden abilities. During a level ascension, the children's vessels will transform, and the hidden abilities accumulated beforehand will receive a corresponding boost. So, an LV.2 who barely reached D in an ability and rushed to level up, and an LV.2 who pushed an ability to S before leveling up, the increase in strength they gain is completely worlds apart. Loki's explanation was clear, and Arthur naturally understood the barrel principle. He had to strengthen his weaknesses as much as possible before leveling up. Examining his current ability scores, strength and magic had advanced by leaps and bounds, truly astonishing, but his other stats seemed dim in comparison. Especially durability. Although he had deliberately engaged in a long struggle with the floor boss Goliath, its improvement speed was still painstakingly slow. After all, I don't have a strange habit of actively seeking to be beaten. It seems I need to specifically dedicate time to training durability. Having made up his mind, Arthur stood up, put on his magical attire, and smiled, waving to the almost drooling Loki and the long-waiting Fufu. Come on, let's go eat steak. I killed so many minotaurs, and not a single piece of beef dropped. Bad review. Fuwu. Hiss. You want to eat monster meat. ... Crimson King's dividing line. Dungeon's 25th floor, labyrinth of water. In the complex terrain of intersecting cliffs and deep currents, Arthur was locked in an intense battle with over a dozen massive snake fish. Galiforce winds tore through the water, stirring up monstrous waves, and amidst the crashing surf, several snake fish were violently swept high into the air. Suddenly separated from their familiar waters, the snake fish thrashed their slippery bodies wildly, their thick tails lashing the air like whips. Dull thudding sounds echoed repeatedly on Arthur's body, and then the snake fish fell back into the river, powerless. Some snake fish tried to escape this vortex of death, but an invisible storm always precisely swept them back to their original spot, as if toying with them. Other than launching futile attacks again and again, they had no choice. Thus, the snake fish were swept up, attacked, and fell, in a continuous cycle, with despair spreading. Fortunately, this bizarre scene was not witnessed by other adventurers, otherwise they would surely have thought themselves in a nightmare. Not only because it was unimaginable that someone could toy with powerful deep-level monsters like this, but also because Arthur was currently standing steadily on the turbulent water as if on solid ground. Within the small area beneath his feet, the water was still, as if completely smoothed by an invisible force. Arthur had only vaguely sensed this peculiar ability after delving into this labyrinth of water. Although it was just a vague feeling, he was sure he had received the blessing of water. Hiss. The humiliated snake fish let out desperate wails. They stopped attacking and, instead, began to accelerate with the pull of the vortex, only wishing to escape this devil. Seeing these monsters completely lose their will to fight, Arthur clicked his tongue with slight dissatisfaction. Running again, can't you learn from the minotaurs and fight to the death with bloodshot eyes? Collect. Accompanied by a short incantation, a complex and intricate crimson spell formula suddenly bloomed from Arthur's fingertip. The spell formula grew brighter, its outline strikingly similar to a revolver cylinder, loaded and ready to fire. Cast. The command was given, like pulling a trigger. Crimson magic bullets tore through the water, shooting out with immense force, precisely piercing the bodies of the snake fish attempting to escape underwater. Arthur swiftly released 2 rounds of magic bullets to clear the area, then skillfully bent down to collect the magic stones and dropped materials scattered nearby. Fuwu, Fu, who had been obediently perched on his shoulder, let out a lazy yawn, seemingly displeased by the scent clinging to Arthur. Fishy smell. No, there isn't. My magical attire has a self-cleaning function. Could you be mistaken? Fu. The pure white beast was too lazy to argue with the foolish human and buried its head to continue sleeping. Arthur suspiciously lifted his arm and sniffed. He indeed didn't smell any unusual odor, so he gave up. Counting the time, it's been about 5 or 6 days since I came down. I feel uncomfortable all over. I really should go back to the surface for a good bath. And so, Arthur, who had originally planned to stay 1 more day, changed his plans. He skillfully went to the 18th floor, found his old acquaintance Old Bill, processed the dropped materials from the past few days, and with the veneer familia's receipt, returned directly to the surface. Old Bill watched Arthur disappear into the passage, then happily sorted through the various materials he had just acquired, his wrinkles crinkling with a smile. Although the 25th floor was only the entrance to the deep levels, the scales and teeth dropped by snake fish had widespread uses and were definitely sought-after goods on the 18th floor, allowing him to make a handsome profit on resale. Old Bill, you've fleeced another fat sheep, haven't you? Exactly. Aren't you afraid of offending some tough familia one day? You'll have hell to pay then. Pa, a bunch of sour grapes. Lord Arthur and I had a fair trade, understand? Besides, he's from the Loki familia. If you're so capable, why don't you try fleecing one? Really, the main force of the Loki familia isn't on an expedition. Where did an upper-tier adventurer come from, acting alone? None of your business. Maybe Lord Arthur is an expert the Loki familia just recruited from outside the city. Hearing this, the surrounding vendors' eyes immediately turned red, cursing Old Bill for his dumb luck. It hurts. Watching that old geezer make money is even more painful than losing my own. 1 comment 0 vote. 7. A miracle that belongs to one person. Chapter 7. A miracle that belongs to one person. Twilight Manor. The parchment trembled slightly in Loki's hand, the god of lies staring intently at the newly translated text, her mouth twitching. On that face, usually accustomed to laughter and scolding, there was now only a mix of frustration and shock, wanting to curse but not knowing where to begin. Arthur calmly put on his magic conduction attire, and seeing his goddess's performance art, which resembled a Sichuan opera face change, he retorted. I was beaten by a fish for several days straight. I hope you're not going to tell me my endurance hasn't reached rank yet. Loki first looked down at the parchment, then up at Arthur, repeating this several times before letting out a long sigh and handing it over. Arthur Pendragon, LV.1, Strength, A852, right pointing arrow SSS, 1864. Endurance, G235, right pointing arrow SS, 1075. Dexterity, B762, right pointing arrow SSS, 1543. Agility, B784, right pointing arrow SSS, 1582. Magic, S959, right pointing arrow SSS, 2000. Magic, Skills, SSS. Arthur frowned slightly, his fingertip tapping the glaring text on the parchment. Didn't you tell me that basic abilities only go up to Shrank? Is this SSS something you just made up? I'm the one who wants to ask you what's going on, alright? Loki immediately bristled, frantically scratching her vermilion hair and pacing restlessly around the room. It makes no sense. We gods have been planning blessings for thousands of years, and we've never had such a mishap. How come with you, kid, everything's gone haywire? Arthur tilted his head towards the disbelieving Loki, wagging a finger to remind her. For a god of lies, are your thoughts really that naive? Loki raised an eyebrow. Hey, kid, that kind of talk is highly disrespectful to me. Even if you're my familia member, you're not allowed to say that. Arthur raised a hand and pointed out the window, where the Tower of Babel Tower, home to the guild, stood tall in the distance. Ability values are an adventurer's biggest secret. Even when reporting to the guild, they only submit their achievements and level. How can you be sure other familias haven't held back? Previously, Loki's mind had been stuck on the unprecedented SSS rank ability values. After Arthur's reminder, her equally quick-witted mind immediately caught on. So you mean to say, damn it, I've long felt that Flirtatious Pigman was suspicious. So that's what it was all about. Flirtatious Pigman, are you talking about Orario's publicly acknowledged ultimate weapon? Ottar of the Freya Familia, titled the strongest, was the strongest adventurer currently existing in the entire Dungeon City, and even the whole world. Arthur had also gained some understanding of his power while reviewing Familia data. As Orario's only LV7, he wouldn't be surprised if the other party had indeed broken through the Shrank limit. If it weren't for the fact that a private duel might lead to war between the two familias, Arthur actually wanted to challenge him to a fight. Loki also saw through Arthur's thoughts and quickly clapped her hands to divert his attention. All right, don't dwell on things that haven't happened yet. Let's level up first. I have high hopes for you, kid. You'll definitely surpass that pigman in the future. Arthur nodded. Then I'll take your words as a divine oracle. Next, I need to choose a development ability, right? Development abilities are special items that only appear when an adventurer levels up. The types and quantities that appear are related to the situations an adventurer encountered before leveling up. For example, if an adventurer encountered many poisonous plants or venomous monsters before leveling up, there's a high probability that the development ability of abnormal resistance will appear when they level up. These special items are similar to but different from basic abilities. Although they also require accumulating experience, they don't reset to 0 upon leveling up but instead slowly improve. First, let me say, you've currently activated 5 development abilities in total. You should carefully consider which one to choose. Loki, who said this, was unusually serious, showing that this seemingly unreliable deity was quite responsible for her familia. Arthur nodded to indicate understanding, signaling Loki to continue explaining the situation. First are abnormal resistance and hunter. The former is a perk for beginners, while the latter is an option that appears only after eliminating a large number of monsters in a short period. As for their effects, they allow you to deal with monsters you've previously defeated more efficiently. Then there are swordsman and magic conduction. These two development abilities are relatively rare. Loki paused, then explained. Swordsman increases your ability values when you equip a sword-type weapon, while magic conduction enhances the power and range of magic, reduces its consumption, and so on. Arthur was weighing the pros and cons of the development abilities when he suddenly noticed Loki's explanation had paused. What about the other one? Loki's voice deepened, her gaze sharp as a hawk, fixed intently on Arthur. The last one, Miracle. This is a development ability that has never appeared before. She took a deep breath, her tone carrying an unbelievable certainty. I still can't quite grasp its specific effect, but I can feel it. It's a power that can turn the impossible into the possible. Although the gods had sealed their great power, their insight from ancient times had not disappeared. Loki was absolutely certain that Miracle was a unique characteristic belonging solely to Arthur, a brilliant light born from the intense collision of an otherworldly soul and the god's blessing. As a god who sought the unknown and entertainment, her heart yearned for Arthur to choose it, but she suppressed the urge to persuade him. Because, based on Loki's brief understanding of this kid, he would definitely not miss out on something like this. Miracle. Then I'll choose that one. I was waiting for you to say that. Arthur Pendragon, LV.2, Strength. 0. Endurance. 0. Dexterity. 0. Agility. 0. Magic. 0. Right pointing arrow 1. Miracle. Magic. Wind of the King. Star Crystal. Skills. Symbol of the Red Dragon. Eternal Blessing of the Star Spirit. Brilliant Journey. Currently opened doors. 1. Inviting you to cross-dimensional doors, to traverse the unknown in infinity. Loki. Sigma Su degree D degree, Su. Loki's eyes instantly widened, as if she had seen the most incredible treasure. She snatched the parchment, rapidly making a rubbing of the new ability value information, excitedly bouncing on the spot. Quick, Arthur, open the door, open it now, I want to go to another world and play. Arthur was slightly distracted, raising a hand to suppress Loki, who was acting like she had rabies, and kindly advised. Calm down. When gods return to the celestial realm, their blessings become ineffective. What do you think you'd turn into if you went to another world? The overexcited Loki was doused with a bucket of cold water, instantly recalling her familia members who were still on their expedition. Yes, once a god leaves the lower world, the blessings carved onto their familia members become ineffective. If she were to go to another world without a care, most of the children she had spent so much time with would probably die in the dungeon. That's not right. If blessings become ineffective when not in the same world, then how did you, kid, come back? Arthur still had that composed smile on his face. He raised a hand and pointed at the miracle on the parchment. Don't worry, I'm special. Then he changed the subject, a deep glint flashing in his eyes. And, even without the god's blessing, he paused, then, meeting Loki's incredulous gaze, calmly stated a fact. I can still fight. Hiss, I'm going to. Loki's finger, pointing at Arthur, was trembling. Her expression was like that of a person who had been hungry for 3 days, seeing a Manchu Han imperial feast but being tied to a chair, able to look but not eat, so frustrated she was about to explode on the spot. 2 comments 0 vote. 8. Godly soldiers descend from heaven, Demon Slayer arc begins. Chapter 8. God's soldier descends from heaven, Demon Slayer arc begins. The vast, eerie hall was so silent it felt as if it could swallow all sound. After successfully persuading Loki to stay behind, Arthur stepped out from a shimmering light portal. Before him lay only a straight path, leading to another identical light portal in the distance. Arthur chuckled softly, how convenient, it doesn't even give me a chance to get lost. Phew! The pure white beast lightly leapt off his shoulder, its paws barely touching the ground, creating silent ripples as it reached the light portal first. Arthur quickly followed, and the moment his fingertips touched the light portal, several pieces of information flooded his mind. Dimensional gate activated. Time flow ratio 120, 1. Mission: purge the corruption in this world, resolve the world's calamity. Immediately after, the voice that had once sounded when he was on the verge of death echoed again. As the price for your second life, embark. This voice was unlike the cold, neutral tone of the previous 2 messages, it contained an undeniable will. It was the owner of this voice who had pulled him back from the brink of death in the explosion, and the price was this contract of service. Arthur's face was calm. No need for you to remind me. All gifts of fate come with a price, I understand that perfectly. Creak. The heavy dimensional gate was pushed open, and Arthur and Fu stepped inside. Mud truck special divider. The mountain forest, shrouded in night, was filled with a heavy, oppressive silence. The wind whimpered, sweeping through twisted branches, swaying into shadowy, clawing figures that resembled demons. Phew! The small beast, standing quietly on his shoulder, let out a warning growl. The smell of blood is strong. It seems this place. Arthur's words abruptly stopped as a foul wind attacked him from behind. A dark shadow shot out, its sharp claws like hooks, aiming straight for the vital point of his back. Clang! A sword gleamed, so fast it left only a fleeting arc. As Arthur dodged sideways, his longsword had already precisely severed the attacking claws. By the faint moonlight, he clearly saw the appearance of the attacker. Dressed in a tattered kimono, with gray-white, shriveled skin, a twisted face, exposed fangs, and bloodshot eyes, it was the spitting image of a demon. Seeing this, Arthur frowned in confusion. What kind of ghost is this? The dismembered monster staggered backward, letting out a roar and curse filled with pain and madness. Bastard! Another demon slayer! It hurts so much, I'll eat you. Japango, demon slayer! A hint of surprise flashed in Arthur's eyes, but his movements didn't stop in the slightest. This demonic thing was more intelligent than a living corpse, yet far weaker than a dead apostle. Was it a unique monster of this world? Before the demon could react, Arthur had already closed in, piercing it through with a backhanded sword thrust, pinning it firmly to the ground. Hey, if you don't want your soul to scatter, then honestly answer my question. What is a demon slayer? The damage caused by the longsword was far beyond that of an ordinary cut. The demon struggled wildly, but there was no sign of the wound healing, and its wails grew fainter. Bastard! Why does it hurt so much? Wait until I recover. The demon completely ignored Arthur, only struggling frantically. But as time passed, its severed arm still did not heal, and its cursing voice grew weaker. Arthur squatted down leisurely, looking down at the dying demon, a cold smile playing on his lips. "It seems we can have a good talk now, Mr. Demon." Meanwhile, deep in the mountain forest, Tanjiro fell heavily to the ground, the forced use of Hinokami Kagura having drained his last ounce of strength. Ringing in his ears, dizziness and intense pain swept through his entire body, even his breathing became fragmented. He struggled to get up, but a stronger smell of blood came from behind him. It wasn't his blood. Tanjiro turned his head in disbelief, his pupils suddenly contracting. "How could this be? I clearly cut off its head. Did you think you won against me? How pathetic. Do you feel happy relying on your sad delusions?" The pale-skinned young demon, Rui, slowly approached, a string in his hand pulling a head that had rolled nearby. "I cut off my own head with a string before you could sever my neck." Rui casually placed the head back on his neck, annoyed that he had been entangled with Tanjiro for so long. "That's enough. I'm going to kill both you and your sister. I haven't been this angry in a long time." Tanjiro had no time to heed the demon's killing intent, only desperately trying to regulate his breathing to stand up again. "Breathing, if I just regulate my breathing." He suddenly stiffened. The smell of the wind had changed. It was no longer the gentle breeze of the forest, but a heavy, violent airflow, compressing the air, making his breathing stop short. Rui also instantly became alert. Before he could activate his blood demon art, a figure, enveloped in a hurricane, charged in with overwhelming force. Bang! A powerful force slammed Rui against a tree trunk. Before it could react, a broadsword blade had already pierced through its chest. Rui cried out in pain, "Who are you?" Arthur expressionlessly pulled out his sword, and with another flash of the blade, a head flew into the sky. "The one sending you on your way." Arthur watched as the demon turned to ash in its unwilling roars, then turned around. His gaze swept over the young man struggling to get up on the ground, finally settling on the small girl in a pool of blood not far away. That was another demon! Exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark. Tanjiro, whose sense of smell was superior to others, detected killing intent. This unfamiliar and cold killing intent was aimed at Nezuko. He forced himself to shout, "Please wait." "Nay, cough cough, Nezuko hasn't hurt anyone. She's my..." Arthur's steps did not falter, his gaze sweeping over the unique uniform on the young man, he asked in confusion. "Young man, as a member of the Demon Slayers, are you protecting a demon?" Tanjiro screamed with all his might, "Nezuko isn't a demon. She's my sister. She's family who fights alongside me." Sister. Arthur's steps paused, and a girl who always quietly followed behind him flashed through his mind. "I see, she's your sister." He walked back to Tanjiro and crouched down, placing his hand over the young man's wound. A glowing green spell quietly lit up, quickly alleviating the intense pain. Tanjiro felt the pain receding, looking at the strange sight in shock. "This power, you're willing to believe me?" Arthur stood up, clapped his hands, his tone casual. "My intuition tells me you're not lying." He looked at Tanjiro and smiled. "Perfect, I'm very interested in demon slayers. Young man, will you tell me about them?" "Don't move." A cold shout rang out from behind Arthur, interrupting the conversation. A black-haired young man, wearing a haori with a left-right split pattern and an expressionless face, stood with his sword drawn, his eyes sharp and full of vigilance. "Who are you? Why are you here?" Arthur calmly turned around, spreading his hands to show he was harmless, a gentle but inscrutable smile on his face. "Nice to meet you. My name is Arthur Pendragon, a knight from Europa. I heard the voice of the apocalypse and came specifically to deal with the calamity, hoping to cooperate sincerely with the demon slayers here." "Gyu. Fu. Omega. Arthur. This gentleman, I am not lying either." 1 comments 0 vote. 9. Platinum Prophecy. Chapter 9. Platinum Prophecy. The silent mountain forest was swept by a gentle night breeze, yet it couldn't dispel the awkward atmosphere, frozen like ice, that hung in the air. Tanjiro, lying on the ground, looked at Tomioka Gyu, whose face was as calm as water, then at Arthur, whose expression was serene, and his mind raced. "Europe, what's that? Mr. Arthur isn't a Demon Slayer Corps member. But he clearly defeated such a powerful 12 Kazuki in one move. Mr. Tomioka's expression is so scary. Why isn't he explaining? Couldn't he just say he's a Demon Slayer Corps member?" On one side was a calm senior, on the other a mysterious strongman. Both were benefactors who had saved his siblings, and Tanjiro genuinely didn't want them to come to blows. Just as Tanjiro was torn, not knowing what to do, an unexpected figure broke the deadlock. Whoosh! A petite figure tore through the night wind, carrying sharp killing intent, and rapidly lunged towards Nezuko, who was still lying in a pool of blood. Tomioka Gyu's pupils contracted slightly, recognizing the newcomer, his body already moved, preparing to intercept forcefully. But he was fast, and someone else was even faster. A golden light instantly flashed, and Arthur arrived, having started later. His platinum longsword precisely blocked the petite figure's path, forcefully cutting off that fatal lunge. Oh! The intruder in midair let out a soft exclamation, clearly surprised by this sudden obstruction. She used the recoil from the sword to lightly float back more than 10 steps, steadying herself, her beautiful eyes slightly narrowed. "Sir, the one you're protecting is a demon, you know. Could you please move aside?" Arthur looked up, carefully scrutinizing this uninvited guest. She wore a pink and white haori with a butterfly pattern, had short black hair styled in a yakimaki, and her face was delicate and gentle. A faint smile was on her face, yet deep within her beautiful purple eyes, an unyielding, icy killing intent was congealed. "So, you demon slayers don't need to confirm the situation before acting." Arthur's voice carried a hint of playfulness. Kocho Shinobu's eyes narrowed further, like a lazy yet dangerous cat. She tilted her head, smiling as she retorted, "Situation, no need." The smile on her face remained unchanged, but her tone was resolute. Slaying evil demons must be done without the slightest hesitation. Hearing this, Arthur merely chuckled softly, not bothering to argue further. He raised his platinum longsword, pointing it towards Kocho Shinobu, his attitude self-evident. Just then, Tomioka Gyu quickly stepped forward, blocking between the two, and shook his head at Kocho Shinobu. "Stop, he should not be an enemy." Kocho Shinobu's brows furrowed, and her tone carried a hint of accusation. "Mr. Tomioka, as a Hashira, are you also going to shield a demon?" Facing his colleague's questioning, Tomioka Gyu maintained his perpetually unmoving, stoic expression, his gaze unwavering. Kocho Shinobu looked at the two people blocking her and fell into a brief silence. She secretly assessed the situation. To ensure a single strike could slay that demon, her lunge just now was held nothing back, both speed and power were pushed to their limits. Yet, it was not only easily intercepted by that unfamiliar swordsman, but she didn't even see when he appeared. The immense recoil from the sword still made her right wrist tingle faintly. This man's strength was unfathomable. Plus, another Hashira-level individual, Tomioka Gyu, who clearly intended to protect that demon. The situation was becoming tricky. Just as the atmosphere solidified again, with the three parties in a standoff, a pitch-black Kasugai crow broke the forest silence, flying directly towards the group. "Order! Order! An order from headquarters. Immediately bring Tanjiro and the demon Nezuko back to headquarters. Tanjiro wears a checkered haori and has a scar on his forehead. The demon Nezuko carries a bamboo muzzle. Furthermore, if you encounter a male holding a platinum longsword, be sure to treat him with respect and invite him to return to headquarters with you. Repeat, immediately bring." The Kasugai crow's sharp voice echoed through the forest, its message causing Tomioka Gyu and Kocho Shinobu to freeze simultaneously. The two turned their heads in unison, their gazes focusing on Arthur, who was protecting Nezuko. In his hand, he held a platinum longsword that shone with a unique luster. Arthur raised his head with interest, looking at the Kasugai crow as it circled and flew away. He knew of messenger pigeons that delivered news and had heard of talking myna birds, but a crow that could speak human language so fluently was indeed rare. Moreover, someone at the Demon Slayer Corps headquarters knew of his existence. And even specified his weapon. He had only arrived in this world a short while ago. Does this world possess prophetic abilities? My sincerest apologies, I was quite rude just now. Kocho Shinobu reined in her killing intent, her impeccable, gentle fake smile returning to her face. After quickly exchanging information with Tomioka Gyu, they seemed to have reached a consensus, and she bowed slightly to Arthur. "My name is Kocho Shinobu, the insect Hashira of the Demon Slayer Corps. Mr. Arthur, would you be willing to accept our invitation and accompany us to the Demon Slayer Corps headquarters?" Although her demeanor was gentle and polite, and her tone soft and delicate, Arthur could keenly sense that deep within her heart, she still harbored dissatisfaction and wariness towards him. However, he didn't care about these minor details, simply nodding to indicate for her to lead the way. Flesh-eating demons, demon-slaying swordsmen, the structure of this world is gradually becoming clearer. A visit to their headquarters might yield more clues about the world's calamity. At the same time, in the Infinity Castle, deep within this upside-down, structurally twisted, infinitely extending otherworldly construct, several figures were forcibly summoned, abruptly appearing amidst the intersecting architecture. Where is this? Lower Moon 6 looked around, its eyes filled with confusion and alarm. Its gaze quickly fixed on the woman on the high platform, holding a biwa with an expressionless face. Is it that woman's blood demon art? It looks like the entire space is twisting around her. As it pondered, Lower Moon 6 suddenly realized a problem. Rui, Lower Moon 5, also a Lower Moon, was not here. Nakame plucked the biwa string again, and under the influence of spatial power, the Lower Moon demons, originally scattered, were instantly moved to the same area. This completely undefendable, even unreactable, forced teleportation caused cold sweat to seep from the brows of several Lower Moon demons, who usually ran rampant, and their unease rapidly expanded. Just as the 5 demons were filled with apprehension, a figure appeared without warning on the high platform before them. It was a geisha wearing a luxurious kimono, with a beautiful face but an oppressively icy demeanor. Bow your heads, kneel, and submit to me. The calm, unruffled voice entered the ears of every Lower Moon demon, yet it seemed to carry a magical power of, what is said is done, instantly stripping them of control over their bodies. Thud, thud, the 5 ruthless demons, like puppets on strings, uncontrollably prostrated themselves before the figure on the high platform, their foreheads pressed against the cold ground. Only then did their remaining reason allow them to realize. This woman before them, whose aura and appearance were completely different from before, was their absolute ruler. The progenitor who had lived for over 1,000 years, standing at the apex of all demons, Muzan Kibutsuji. My deepest apologies. Lord Muzan, Lower Moon 4, Hantengu, spoke with a trembling voice, attempting to explain. Because your appearance and aura have changed, we were momentarily unable to. Who permitted you to speak? An icy voice interrupted his defense. The next second, a thorny whip made of flesh and blood, like a living venomous snake, instantly enveloped Lower Moon 4 completely. Rip, rip, bone-chilling sounds of bone and flesh tearing and dull chewing came from within the flesh whip, brief and urgent. When the thorny whip retracted, only a puddle of foul blood remained, Lower Moon 4 utterly annihilated. Their boss's brutal act of instantly turning hostile and eliminating them at the slightest disagreement left the remaining Lower Moons utterly silent, their breathing almost stopped, as terror gripped their hearts. Casually obliterating a Lower Moon, Muzan Kibutsuji vented some of the anger that had accumulated in his heart due to Rui's death. His gaze swept over the 4 demons below, and he continued in his emotionless voice. Rui was killed, Lower Moon 5. I only ask one thing, why are the Lower Moon demons so weak? The question struck the hearts of the 4 demons like a heavy hammer. They trembled even more violently, yet not one dared to look up and answer. Muzan looked at these useless beings who lacked even the courage to face his questioning, and in his crimson eyes, emotions of brutality and impatience surged once again. His personality was extremely contradictory. He possessed both arrogant contempt for everything and a deep-seated cowardice. On one hand, he yearned for powerful subordinates to consolidate his rule, while on the other, he pathologically feared his subordinates becoming too strong and uniting to threaten him. This contradictory psychology led him to strictly control his subordinates, even issuing prohibitions against demons gathering privately. But there were always exceptions, such as Rui. Rui's experience of being sickly during his human life bore a subtle resemblance to Muzan's own, which led him to bestow unusual care and affection upon Rui. Therefore, against the backdrop where all demons had to fight individually, only Rui was tacitly allowed by him to form a twisted, false family and play cruel, bloody games of house. Now, Rui, whom he regarded as his son, was dead, and this completely ignited the Demon King's already twisted and pathological psyche. For the past 100 years or more, the positions of the upper moons have never changed. Only the upper moons are capable of repeatedly sending the Demon Slayer corpse Hashira to their graves. I've had enough of your incompetence, you lower moons. Muzan's voice suddenly rose, and deep within his crimson eyes, a viscous, inky blackness seemed to swirl. If you cannot immediately demonstrate appropriate value, then there is no longer any need for the lower moon demons to exist. As his voice fell, an immense, suffocating terror descended, as if to completely crush this infinity castle along with the remaining 4 lower moon demons. 0 comments, 0 vote. 10. 9 pillars gathered together. Chapter 10. 9 pillars gathered. Creak, creak. The sound of wooden wheels rolling over the ground came to an abrupt halt. Arthur, who had been waiting with a blindfold on, heard a respectful greeting. "Thank you for waiting, Mr. Arthur. We have arrived at headquarters, you may remove your blindfold." Phew! A fluffy touch brushed against Arthur's hand, it was Fufu protesting. "Ah, my deepest apologies, I will remove it for your little pet right away." The logistics personnel from the Kikuchi Corps quickly went to untie the black cloth from Fufu's eyes. It seemed that to hide the headquarters and protect the Ubuyashiki clan from demon threats, the Demon Slayer Corps' security measures were indeed taken to the extreme, not even sparing pets. Arthur pulled off his blindfold, briefly adjusted to the light, and then surveyed the secluded courtyard hidden deep within. Crushed stone paths wound through, with wisteria flowers cascading like waterfalls on both sides, their subtle fragrance permeating the air. Deep within the courtyard, an artificial stream gurgled, spanned by a rainbow bridge. He jumped off the cart, understanding dawning on him. The circuitous route and the secluded scenery explained why the Demon Slayer Corps headquarters had remained hidden for so long. Arthur crossed the rainbow bridge, and the figures of Tanjiro and Nezuko came into view. They had clearly arrived earlier. The unconscious boy was casually placed on the ground, while his sister, Nezuko, was hidden inside a wooden box. Besides them, 9 figures stood prominently in the courtyard. Their attire varied, but their aura was uniformly sharp and formidable. They were the Demon Slayer Corps' strongest fighters, the 9 pillars. If not for the Master's direct command, only the biannual pillar meeting could bring them all together. "Ho, the silver-haired young man in the report who dealt with Lower Moon 5, that's our guest, right?" A somewhat flamboyant voice spoke. The speaker was tall, with a dazzling diamond-studded forehead protector, and carried 2 striking Nichiren blades on his back. It was Uzui Tengen, the Sound Pillar. At this moment, he looked at Arthur's unique hair color with great interest. He secretly approved of the other's flamboyant aesthetic. To be able to contend with a member of the 12 Kazuki, impressive. "I didn't expect such a strong individual outside the Demon Slayer Corps, truly admirable." Kyojuro Rengoku, the Flame Pillar, wearing a haori with a flame pattern, spoke in a booming voice, his eyes filled with admiration. Kanroji Mitsuri, the Love Pillar, wearing a slightly daring uniform, twirled her cherry-pink braided hair with her fingertips, but couldn't help but steal glances at Fufu on Arthur's shoulder. "What a handsome guest, and he's carrying such a cute little animal, he must be a gentle person." Gyome Himahima, the Stone Pillar, dressed as a monk, was the most robust. He stood in the center, hands clasped, 2 lines of tears slowly falling. For such a young guest to be able to slay Lower Moon 5, he must have endured many hardships. Namu Amida Butsu. "Tch, who cares about that?" Tsunemi Shinazugawa, the Wind Pillar, interrupted his lament with a fierce voice. The man had spiky white hair, scars crisscrossing beneath his half-open uniform, and glared menacingly at Tanjiro on the ground. "First, deal with this member who's with a demon. This is a serious crime." Shinazugawa is right. From the corner, Iguro Obanai, the Serpent Pillar, spoke coldly. He wore a black and white striped haori, and the white snake around his neck hissed and flicked its tongue at Tanjiro. As a demon slayer, to associate with a demon is absolutely unforgivable. Among the 9 pillars, only Tokito Muichiro, the Mist Pillar, looked at the sky as if detached, his expression indifferent. As if everything happening around him had nothing to do with him. Arthur watched with folded arms, having no intention of interfering, merely listening to the 9 pillars' judgment of Tanjiro and Nezuko. Although he had only arrived yesterday, the information he already had was enough for him to make a simple judgment. The enemy's strength was divided by moon phases, with a total of 12 Kazuki. And the 9 individuals before him were called pillar-level swordsmen, far stronger than the Lower Moon 5 he had previously slain. Yet, the Demon Slayer Corps, possessing such combat power, had been entangled with demons for 1,000 years, often at a disadvantage. Was there a vast power gap between upper moons and lower moons? Or was the number of demon slayers insufficient to deal with the number of demons? Mr. Shinazugawa, please put the box down. This is causing me great trouble. The commotion interrupted Arthur's thoughts, making him look up. Tsunemi Shinazugawa snatched the wooden box where Nezuko was hiding, and the Kikuchi members were trying to stop him. The man glared fiercely at the struggling Tanjiro, scoffing. How dare you say a demon will fight to protect humans? That's absolutely impossible, bastard. Before his words finished, Tsunemi Shinazugawa abruptly drew his Nichiren blade from his waist and stabbed it into the wooden box with a backhand strike. The wind suddenly tore through the air. Tsunemi Shinazugawa felt his hand go empty, and looking closely, the wooden box had already landed steadily in the guest's hand not far away. So fast, the pillars' hearts trembled, their pupils constricted, no one present could clearly see Arthur's movements. Such speed, even the sound pillar, known for his explosive power, would be ashamed. Arthur slowly put down the wooden box, his smile undiminished, but his tone carried a hint of playfulness. Are all you demon hunters so hot-tempered? One after another, talking about violations and punishments, surely that's something only a leader has the authority to decide. Tsunemi Shinazugawa's forehead veins bulged, and he sneered. Less talk, such a small matter doesn't require bothering the master. Mr. Shinazugawa, please stop. Kocho Shinobu's words were cut short as Tsunemi Shinazugawa already launched his attack. Wind breathing, first form, dust whirlwind cutter. Tsunemi Shinazugawa pushed off the ground, shattering gravel, and with a fierce gust of wind, a emerald blade light chopped down directly. Arthur's smile vanished. With a raised hand, a platinum longsword appeared out of thin air and swung forward casually. The wind, with even greater ferocity, roared and reversed. A solid tornado formed out of nowhere, instantly swallowing Shinazugawa's attack and violently sweeping his rapidly charging figure into the air. A weapon appearing out of thin air. Mr. Shinazugawa. I knew it. What kind of power is that? A swing of a sword generated a storm. Amidst the pillars' exclamations, Tsunemi Shinazugawa tumbled awkwardly in midair, then crashed heavily to the ground. Damn it, he quickly rolled over. Though not seriously injured, he felt utterly humiliated and roared, charging forward again. Wind breathing, 8th form, primary gale slash. A full-body rotating slash brought even stronger sword pressure, vowing to tear the person before him to shreds. Arthur, however, had no interest in continuing the entanglement. He swung his sword again, generating another storm, which blew Shinazugawa away even more awkwardly. He then turned his head, casting his gaze towards the dwelling deep within the courtyard, and said loudly. If you were trying to confirm the so-called platinum sword, I've already taken it out. Aren't you going to show yourself? My deepest apologies, I had no intention of testing you. A gentle and soft voice rang out, as if carrying a peculiar calming power, instantly quieting the clamor in the courtyard. It's just that this frail body is truly inconvenient to move, so I couldn't stop Tsunemi's impulsiveness in time. Master. The 9 pillars became solemn, all kneeling on one knee, bowing their heads in respect. Even Tsunemi Shinazugawa, who had just been fuming, immediately reined in his ferocity, his attitude respectful. Soon, a luxuriously dressed man, needing his wife and daughter's support to move, slowly walked out. He possessed a dignified demeanor and graceful movements, but the upper half of his face was covered with diseased marks, a shocking sight. Kagaya Ubuyashiki, the current master of the Demon Slayer Corps. He looked at the platinum sword in Arthur's hand with eyes that were almost blind, his weak voice containing an indescribable excitement and hope. Finally, the key to severing this 1,000-year destiny has finally appeared. He turned his gaze to Arthur, with undisguised pleading in his eyes. Mr. Arthur, are you willing to become our hope to break this curse? 1 comments 0 vote. 11. Ubuyashiki's plea. Chapter 11 Ubuyashiki's plea. Kagaya Ubuyashiki's almost burning, earnest gaze locked onto Arthur, making the latter frown slightly, a strange expression in his eyes. This should be our first meeting, right? Arthur's tone was somewhat casual as he spread his palms. Don't you think you should explain the situation to me first? His casual attitude instantly ignited the anger of several pillars in the courtyard, and sharp gazes shot towards Arthur in unison. However, Kagaya Ubuyashiki seemed oblivious, nodding very naturally, and explaining the situation in a gentle yet weak voice. It turned out that the Ubuyashiki clan had been intermarrying with women of priestly bloodlines for generations. This not only alleviated the curse of their family members' short lifespans but also granted them a special ability akin to precognition. The Ubuyashiki clan accumulated immense wealth through this ability, and then invested it unreservedly into the construction and operation of the Demon Slayer Corps, supporting this team that had fought demons for 1,000 years. Just last night, Kagaya Ubuyashiki's weak voice suddenly rose, and an unusual light flickered in his eyes. I foresaw a scene, a man holding a brilliant platinum holy sword, and before him, the Demon King collapsing entirely and wailing to the sky. After listening to his narration, Arthur nodded thoughtfully and interjected. So, you foresaw that the Demon King named Muzan Kibutsuji would die by my hand, and that's why you hurriedly sent a Kasugai crow to invite me to the Demon Slayer Corps headquarters. As you say. Kagaya Ubuyashiki's face broke into a smile mixed with anticipation and pain. He yearned to end Muzan Kibutsuji more than anyone, but his frail body couldn't even wield a sword, so this long-cherished wish could only be placed on the prophecy. Mr. Arthur, I heard that your journey is precisely to quell the chaos. He took a deep breath, trying to straighten his body, but it triggered a violent fit of coughing. Cough cough, cough, I can have the entire Demon Slayer Corps assist you with all their might. I only ask that you lend a hand and help us end this nightmare that has entangled us for 1,000 years. The impact of the prophecy and the shock of witnessing Arthur's power firsthand made this family head, burdened with 1,000 years of resentment, unable to suppress his inner excitement any longer. He suddenly hunched over and coughed violently, dark red blood immediately spilling from his palm. Master, please take care of yourself. Although I deeply respect the master, isn't this decision too hasty? But Mr. Arthur is truly strong, even Mr. Tsunemi. Mitsuri, don't talk nonsense. I'm sorry, I'm really sorry, Mr. Tsunemi, I didn't mean to say that. Namu Amida Butsu, Mr. Arthur's strength is beyond doubt, we are ashamed of our inferiority. In the courtyard, the opinions of the pillars were clearly not unified. Some were concerned about the master's decision, while others were impressed by the strength Arthur displayed. Kagaya Ubuyashiki finally managed to calm his rapid breathing, a sickly blush appearing on his pale face. He looked up, his gaze falling on Arthur again, his voice weak but with an undeniable earnestness. Mr. Arthur, if you have any other concerns, please speak frankly. Perhaps we can also share your burden. Arthur shook his head, his expression calm. It's not a concern, I do feel that Demon King has some problems. He paused, his gaze sweeping over everyone present. You said the Demon Slayer Corps can assist me, but I'm new here after all. How much information do you have about that Muzan Kibutsuji? This question clearly made Kagaya Ubuyashiki look troubled. Information about Muzan Kibutsuji. Arthur's direct attitude left this thoughtful master momentarily speechless. Although the Demon Slayer Corps had been entangled with demons for 1,000 years, the actual information about the Demon King himself was pitifully scarce. That Demon King not only possessed unimaginable power but also the eerie ability to transform into anyone, his whereabouts elusive and extremely difficult to track. Even when occasional clues were caught, they were merely vague rumors. More importantly, some of the information Kagaya Ubuyashiki possessed had a special source and was truly unsuitable for public disclosure in front of all the pillars. In this subtle silence, Tanjiro, who had been pressed to the ground and almost became part of the background, suddenly struggled. He broke free, looked up, and shouted with all his might. Mr. Arthur, I know information about Muzan Kibutsuji. Nani. Instantly, all the pillars, gazes shot towards Tanjiro like arrows, their faces filled with astonishment and disbelief. The Demon King's information, which the Demon Slayer Corps had spent countless manpower and resources trying to find, was known by this rule-breaking member who carried a demon. Arthur first glanced at the conflicted, as expected, expression on Kagaya Ubuyashiki's face, then stepped towards the boy lying on the ground. I remember your name is Tanjiro Kamado, right? His voice was still calm, and he made a move to untie Tanjiro. Tell me in detail about that Demon King's information. Okay, Tanjiro opened his mouth, subconsciously looking at the pillars around him, who had various expressions and were staring intently at him. His mouth, which was faster than his brain, was now racing with thoughts. No, Mr. Arthur isn't part of the Demon Slayer Corps. He's willing to save Nezuko, but the pillars will definitely not let Miss Tamayo go. The source of this information cannot be known by the Demon Slayer Corps. Having made up his mind, Tanjiro looked up again, meeting everyone's gaze with determination. The information about Muzan Kibutsuji concerns another benefactor of mine. I'm very sorry, but I can only tell Mr. Arthur alone. What did you say, you brat? Tsunemi Shinazugawa's veins bulged on his forehead, and his right hand was already on his Nichiren blade. Not only do you travel with a demon, but you dare to hoard information about the Demon King. Tengen Uzui stroked his chin, his eyes becoming dangerous. Indeed, he should be beheaded. Let me flamboyantly chop off his head. The atmosphere grew tense again, and a dispute was on the verge of breaking out. Tanjiro's words had almost torn through the thin veil. Kagaya Ubuyashiki raised his hand to gesture for calm, his gentle yet firm voice soothing the agitated pillars. Tanjiro Kamado, that benefactor you mentioned, is it Miss Tamayo? Tanjiro's body trembled violently, his eyes filled with disbelief. He never expected that the supreme leader of the Demon Slayer Corps would actually know Miss Tamayo, who was a demon. Kagaya Ubuyashiki first gave Tanjiro a gentle and tolerant smile, then turned to Arthur, bowing slightly. Please forgive me, Mr. Arthur. I did hesitate just now whether to tell you this information. After all, Miss Tamayo's identity is somewhat special and not suitable for public disclosure. Arthur's gaze shifted between Kagaya Ubuyashiki and Tanjiro, a knowing smile playing on his lips. I see, I can probably understand your concerns. Let's discuss it privately later then. Thank you for your understanding. Kagaya Ubuyashiki nodded gently, his expression relaxing. Thus, the topic of specific information about Muzan Kibutsuji was temporarily put aside. Although the pillars and Tanjiro present all had doubts, judging by Arthur's and Kagaya Ubuyashiki's expressions, they clearly had no intention of discussing it further immediately. Next, Kagaya Ubuyashiki began to address the issue of Tanjiro and Nezuko. He produced a written life guarantee co-signed by the former water pillar Sakanji Urokodaki and the current water pillar Tomioka Gyu, and clearly expressed his trust in the Kamado siblings. Under the master's insistence and the guarantee of the two water pillars, despite the remaining doubts among the pillars, they finally reluctantly agreed to Nezuko's existence as a demon slayer. Subsequently, Tanjiro and Nezuko were secretly taken to the Butterfly Mansion for treatment and placement. Kagaya Ubuyashiki, feeling unwell and unable to move for long periods, knelt on the veranda and extended an invitation to Arthur. Mr. Arthur, if you don't mind, you can temporarily stay at this residence during this time. As the headquarters of the Demon Slayer Corps, its safety is guaranteed. Arthur, however, shook his head and asked in return, what is that butterfly mansion you just mentioned? Upon hearing this, Kagaya Ubuyashiki gestured to Kocho Shinobu, who was nearby. As the owner of the butterfly mansion, Kocho Shinobu stepped forward and explained with a smile. That is a place specifically for Demon Slayer Corps members to receive treatment and rehabilitation training. Is Mr. Arthur interested in the butterfly mansion? No. Arthur shook his head again, his gaze turning towards the direction Nezuko had been taken, with a hint of pity and inquiry in his eyes. I'm interested in that girl named Nezuko. According to your statements, becoming a demon makes one crave flesh and blood, but she can suppress this instinct. Arthur's voice was calm, yet carried the undeniable air of a scholar. She even retains her self-awareness and can fight other demons. This kind of power cannot be explained by sleep alone. Kocho Shinobu's polite smile stiffened slightly. She looked at Arthur, a hint of probing in her tone. Could it be, Mr. Arthur also has some knowledge of medicine? A bitter arc formed on Arthur's lips, and he self-deprecatingly said, of course, I've dealt with various medical equipment for much longer than you might imagine. Upon hearing this, Kagaya Ubuyashiki immediately understood Arthur's intention. He seized the opportunity to arrange for Arthur to temporarily stay at the Butterfly Mansion, so he could observe Nezuko's situation closely, and at the same time made a promise. I will give orders to have all relevant materials collected by the Ubuyashiki clan throughout generations sent to the Butterfly Mansion for your perusal. The weight of this promise was considerable. Several pillars who knew the family's deep resources were secretly startled, and their gazes towards Arthur became even more complex. 0 comments 0 vote. 12. Ghost Blood and Breathing Technique. Chapter 12 Ghost Blood and Breathing Technique. Butterfly Mansion. Inside the silent laboratory, only the faint glow from the microscope's bulb illuminated Arthur's focused expression. He squinted, his gaze fixed on Nezuko's blood sample under the lens. At this moment, he was trying to unravel a mystery. Why, as a demon, was Nezuko so different? As for the analysis results, they could only be described as peculiar. It wasn't that the essence of a demon was peculiar, but that Nezuko herself was a huge anomaly. The blood components under the microscope seemed to possess life, continuously changing and pulsating at an astonishing speed. Despite having become a demon, unable to eat normally, and never having devoured human flesh and blood. Yet, Nezuko's body seemed to contain an inexhaustible energy source, supporting the incredible transmutation of her blood. This completely defied the common sense he knew. Even the alchemy he specialized in had to operate under the iron law of equivalent exchange. With this thought, Arthur reached for the documents provided by the Ubuyashiki clan on the table. The content on the yellowed pages was sparse, only recording a cruel fact. All the demons existing in the world originated from the blood split by Muzan Kibutsuji. Arthur had also observed other demon blood samples stored in the Butterfly Mansion. Although those blood samples also contained vitality far exceeding that of humans, compared to Nezuko's blood, they were like stagnant water, completely lacking the latter's activity. A demon's regenerative ability is extremely strong. Severed limbs can be quickly restored, essentially ruling out the possibility of blood decaying due to being outside the body for too long. Combined with the events Tanjiro recounted, his entire family was attacked, and only his sister Nezuko survived after being exposed to Muzan Kibutsuji's blood, but she turned into a demon. The answer seemed to be on the tip of his tongue. Nezuko's mutation originated from Muzan Kibutsuji's blood, but it underwent a miraculous fusion with some unknown, unique physique of her own. Similar to humans who can quickly adapt to becoming dead apostles. Arthur's thoughts leapt to his original world. That world was bizarre, with demons and monsters emerging endlessly, and his thinking was far more open than that of people in this world. With a clear mind, he immediately called for the medical staff of the Butterfly Mansion to help him with a small task. Before long, a fresh blood sample from Tanjiro was brought before him. After quickly determining the blood type through centrifuge and saline tests, Arthur carefully mixed the two blood samples. The experimental results were a mix of joy and sorrow. The moment it came into contact with Tanjiro's blood, the mutation speed of Nezuko's blood suddenly surged, and its activity directly doubled, as if pouring oil on fire. Unfortunately, this astonishing burst lasted for less than a few seconds, and the rapidly changing blood quickly became dormant and completely inactive, as if it had exhausted all its energy. Clearly, the amount of the experimental sample was too small to sustain this drastic change. But the result was enough to explain the problem. Tanjiro, the brother with a blood connection to Nezuko. His blood could provide powerful fuel for the mutation within Nezuko's body, aiding her evolution. This is truly. Arthur shook his head with a bitter smile, an absurd thought taking root in his mind, refusing to leave. If Tanjiro had stayed home that day, after coming into contact with the Demon King's blood, perhaps an existence far more terrifying than the Demon King would have been born. Further investigation into Nezuko's condition still needed to wait for Kagaya Ubuyashiki and Tamayo to finalize their meeting arrangements. After all, Tamayo's identity was special, making it inconvenient for her to appear at the Demon Slayer Corps headquarters. Arthur would have to go in person. He meticulously recorded the experimental data and deductions, then got up and left the laboratory, which was filled with the smell of medicine. As soon as he pushed open the door, a voice with a clear fake smile drifted over. "Era, Mr. Arthur, is there any progress in your research?" Kocho Shinobu, who had been waiting for a long time, leaned against the door, her gentle smile not reaching her eyes. Arthur's gaze fell on Kocho Shinobu's overly perfect fake smile, but his mind flashed to the residual toxic instruments in the laboratory. He was silent for a moment, but still couldn't help but advise her. The effect of wisteria poison on demons is ultimately limited. Everything you are doing now is like a moth flying into a flame, it's simply not worth it. Kocho Shinobu's smile instantly vanished, replaced by an unyielding coldness. "I'm terribly sorry, I don't understand what you're saying." Arthur shook his head helplessly. He understood the taboo of speaking too deeply with a casual acquaintance, so he said no more and turned to leave. Watching Arthur's retreating back, Kocho Shinobu's fingers, gripping the hilt of her sword, tightened immensely, her face so gloomy it seemed it could drip water. "Moth flying into a flame, is that it?" she murmured to herself, a resolute fire of hatred burning in her eyes. "As long as I can get revenge, what does it matter if I burn in the flames?" Returning to the temporary lounge arranged by the medical staff, the first thing that caught Arthur's eye was Fu, who was lying on the bed, reading in a strange posture. That's right, reading. The pure white, usually only interested in fighting and food, young beast. At this moment, it was squatting on the edge of the bed in a very human-like manner, its front paws carefully holding down an ancient book, its furry head very close, as if concentrating on deciphering the text. The book was a document that Kagaya Ubuyashiki had specifically ordered his hidden to deliver, and its content was all-encompassing. It recorded the history of the Demon Slayer Corp's struggle against demons over 1,000 years, as well as various secret anecdotes. Arthur knew that Fu could read, and seeing it so engrossed, he didn't disturb its rare moment of refined enjoyment. He walked directly to the desk and sat down, his gaze sweeping over the topmost ancient book on the desk, whose cover bore 4 large characters. Water breathing. This is, Arthur was slightly taken aback, then immediately understood. This should be the foundation upon which the Demon Slayer Corps swordsman relied to fight demons, breathing technique. Earlier, when he fought Kocho Shinobu and Tsunemi Shinazugawa, he had keenly noticed something unusual. The breathing rhythm of these two was extremely special, with an astonishing intake of air, but a relatively small exhalation. Accompanying this breathing was an explosive increase in physical functions. Arthur came from a world where mystery far surpassed martial arts, and he found this method of purely training the body to obtain superhuman power very novel. After all, in his original world, a martial artist who had practiced boxing for 20 years couldn't withstand a volley of magic bullets. Naturally, few magus would delve into the limits of the body's potential. As for reinforcement magic and close-quarters combat, those were more of a compulsory course for modern magus to deal with emergencies, and cannot be generalized. With curiosity in his eyes, he opened Water Breathing, and began to read it carefully. The breathing technique of this world was completely different from the breathing technique in his understanding. In his world, breathing technique mostly referred to adjusting breathing rhythm and frequency during exercise to improve oxygen efficiency, stabilize body and mind, and enhance endurance. But the breathing technique here pushed the function of the heart and lungs to the extreme. Through a specific breathing method, a massive amount of oxygen, far exceeding the normal human limit, was frantically ingested, forcing the blood to become extremely active in a short period, thereby unleashing astonishing physical abilities capable of contending with demons. Swordsmen who further mastered the breathing technique could even maintain this extreme state for 24 hours, continuously improving their physical fitness like an unceasing furnace. The person who created the breathing technique is definitely a genius. After understanding the wonders of the breathing technique, Arthur expressed his heartfelt admiration. After quickly browsing the methods of water breathing, Arthur closed the ancient book and sat upright at the desk. He closed his eyes and began to try to operate the water breathing as described in the book. Hiss, hoo, a large amount of airflow surged into his lungs. He could clearly feel his heart rate accelerating and his muscles subtly bulging. But after only repeating it dozens of times, Arthur frowned and opened his eyes. He shook his head and, without another word, directly picked up the flame breathing next to him. In the following time, he tried and experienced the 5 most basic breathing techniques of the Demon Slayer Corps. Water, flame, wind, thunder, and stone, one by one. Finally, he came to a conclusion. These breathing techniques designed for ordinary people have very little effect on me. Arthur leaned back in his chair, his fingers unconsciously tapping on the table. Simply relying on strengthening cardiopulmonary function to improve physical function, the efficiency is far less than if I directly cast reinforcement magi. Mid-sentence, Arthur's voice abruptly stopped. His eyes changed dramatically, and he fell into a deeper level of thought. Among the divine blessings he possessed, there was a skill called Symbol of the Red Dragon. Its effect, in addition to an overspec increase in magic resistance and consciousness perception, more importantly, granted him an incomparably powerful magic reactor core. This reactor core allowed him to continuously generate vast amounts of magic power simply by breathing. People in this world had no magic power, so they had to find another way, indirectly enhancing physical fitness by inhaling large amounts of oxygen to strengthen their heart and lungs. So, what about Arthur, who possessed a magic reactor core? His magic power was already far beyond that of ordinary magus, and after obtaining the divine blessing, it had grown like a snowball, never stopping. Breathing technique, through specific rhythmic breathing, guides chi to strengthen the body. The magic reactor core generates endless magic power through breathing. Reinforcement magic uses magic power as energy to directly strengthen bodily functions. What if he could combine these three to create a brand new breathing technique that directly guides magic power through breathing, as precise and efficient as guiding chi, continuously strengthening bodily functions? Arthur's eyes burst with brilliant light, as if an explorer had discovered a new continent. Magic reactor core, the application principle of reinforcement magic, the guiding techniques of breathing technique. He muttered to himself, his voice filled with uncontrollable excitement. I have all the conditions. Come on, let me try. Try to create my unique magic breathing technique. Arthur suddenly sat up straight, his eyes closed, discarding all distracting thoughts. Following the preliminary path he had rapidly deduced in his mind, he began to attempt to guide the surging, ceaseless torrent of magic power within him, born from his breathing. The next moment, a colossal force, as if about to burst him, roared to life and surged forth. Intense pain struck him. 1 comments 0 vote. 13. Occasional flashes of inspiration. Chapter 13. Occasional flashes of aura. Night fell, and Butterfly Mansion was quiet, with only a figure lying on the roof. Arthur once again broke free from the intense physical rejection, with each failure accompanied by ringing in his ears, a swollen head, blood flowing backward, and tearing pain in his heart and lungs. If he didn't possess the powerful recovery ability of the star crystal, allowing him to repair injuries himself, he wouldn't dare to play like this with several lives. Arthur lay on his back on the cool tiles, gazing at the vast starry sky, his brows tightly furrowed. Tisk, as expected, was I too greedy? The attempt to create a brand new breathing technique was 100 times more difficult than he had initially imagined. The 5 basic breathing techniques of the Demon Slayer core are water's length, flame's intensity, wind's ferocity, thunder's swiftness, and stone's tenacity. Each has its focus and its advantages and disadvantages, but it was difficult to find a perfect rhythm that could integrate them all. The consequence of violently mashing them together was that even his powerful physique was on the verge of collapse. Specializing in wind breathing and developing a style that suits me might be faster. Arthur muttered to himself, the thought of giving up sprouting like a vine, only to be choked by the deep-seated unwillingness in his heart. He didn't have the habit of settling for less. Just then, the faint sound of footsteps on the tiles came from behind him. Arthur turned his head to see Tanjiro carefully approaching with a tray, still wrapped in thick bandages, his injuries clearly not yet healed. Mr. Arthur, I always said you didn't come for dinner, so I brought some for you. Arthur sat up and waved to him. Don't be so formal, just call me Arthur. I'm only 3 years older than you. Tanjiro, however, stubbornly shook his head and said seriously. How can I? You are our savior. If it weren't for you, Nezuko and I might have already. Arthur raised an eyebrow slightly, interrupting his explanation. How is your sister doing? When Nezuko was mentioned, Tanjiro's face immediately broke into a smile, and his tone became cheerful. Thank you for your concern, Nezuko has almost fully recovered. Is that so? That's good. Arthur nodded, his tone unconsciously carrying a hint of undetectable softness. Tanjiro keenly sensed this emotion and scratched his head curiously. I always feel that Mr. Arthur cares a lot about Nezuko. Arthur picked up a rice ball from the tray and took a bite, his gaze returning to the starry sky, his tone flat. Probably because I also have a younger sister. Tanjiro's eyes lit up. Mr. Arthur also has a younger sister. Is she waiting for you to return in Europe? Arthur calmly shook his head, his voice without any fluctuation. No, she passed away in an explosion accident. Tanjiro. Degree winking face. The previously relaxed atmosphere suddenly solidified, and the night wind seemed to stop flowing, leaving only the faint sound of Arthur chewing food echoing on the roof. Realizing he had touched a raw nerve, Tanjiro frantically searched for a new topic, his tone sounding unusually stiff. Ah, right. I saw the Kikuchi bringing in many boxes. Is Mr. Arthur busy with something special recently? He immediately added. Like me now, I'm diligently practicing the total concentration, constant breathing technique. Total concentration. Constant is the formal name for maintaining the breathing technique for 24 hours. Mastering this method continuously enhances physical functions and is the most basic condition for becoming a pillar-level swordsman. Arthur brushed off the rice grains from his hand, took a sip of tea, and explained. Similar to you, I'm trying to create a brand new breathing technique. A brand new breathing technique. Tanjiro pondered. The Demon Slayer core has a history of over 1,000 years, and there have been geniuses who created their own breathing techniques. His companion, Inosuke Hashibira, was one of them, deriving the wild beast breathing from wind breathing. Immediately, memories of the desperate situation on Mt. Nadagumo flooded his mind. At the brink of death, the Kagura dance taught by his father transformed into a power to defeat enemies. That power, far exceeding water breathing, still puzzled him. Why could a dance for worshipping gods be used for combat? He had intended to ask Kocho Shinobu, the insect pillar, about this question after recovering, but now. Mr. Arthur. A hint of inquiry flickered in Tanjiro's eyes as he said in a deep voice. Have you heard of Hinokami Kagura, Waltz? Hinokami Kagura, Waltz. Arthur put down his teacup and quickly searched the vast database provided by the Ubuyashiki clan in his mind, but ultimately shook his head. No impression. Judging by the name, it sounds like some kind of dance for worshipping gods. Tanjiro nodded vigorously. You're right. That is our family's ancestral Kagura dance, performed every winter to pray to the fire god for peace. But during the battle with Lower Moon 5, I recalled my father's teachings, and I was actually able to use it as a breathing technique. Arthur's heart inexplicably tightened, and his casual sitting posture subtly straightened. An ancestral ritual dance, usable as a breathing technique. This was too interesting. The Kamado family, not only with special physiques that quickly adapted to demon blood, but even their ancestral dance was so extraordinary. A faint, blurry spark ignited in Arthur's mind, as if he had grasped a crucial clue. He suddenly stood up, pulled out a small crystal bottle from his inner lining, and tossed it to Tanjiro. Drink this, then perform the Hinokami Kagura for me. Ah, yes. Tanjiro instinctively caught it. Though his face showed confusion, he obediently uncorked the bottle and drank the liquid inside. The bitterness he expected did not appear. Instead, it was like a sweet spring entering his throat, and a warm current instantly surged through his entire body, followed by a strange tingling sensation. A faint green glow flashed across Tanjiro's body, and he excitedly clenched his fist, standing up abruptly. My injuries are all healed. This is incredible. Indeed, the effect is immediate. Arthur observed from the side, also nodding inwardly. Because he himself possessed the powerful recovery of the star crystal, this was the first time he had directly witnessed the power of Orario's panacea. This was a precious potion that could only be refined by alchemists who had mastered the blending development ability. The panacea's recovery effects were remarkable, reportedly even able to pull dying adventurers back from the brink of death. Seeing Tanjiro's instant recovery, it was no wonder Loki looked pained when she handed it to him. Mr. Arthur, this medicine, is it particularly expensive? At this moment, Tanjiro's excitement faded. He shook the empty bottle in his hand, his voice as dry as airdried charcoal. Arthur raised an eyebrow, replying with a playful tone. It's all right, just 500,000 per bottle. Someone left it for me to save my life before I left. 500,000. Tanjiro was struck as if by lightning, instantly petrified. His family had lived by selling charcoal for generations. When had he ever seen such an astronomical figure as 500,000? This is truly too valuable. Arthur raised a hand to interrupt him, pointing to the rehabilitation area behind the house. Instead of worrying about money here, you should quickly perform your Hinokami Kagura for me. If it can truly help me solve my current problem, then this 500,000 will be well worth it. Tanjiro's eyes instantly became resolute, and he nodded vigorously. I understand. Please follow me. He no longer hesitated, turning and running towards the training ground below. Under the night, an ancient dance, passed down for centuries, unfolded. A sharp glint flashed in Arthur's eyes as he thought to himself. Within this ancient heritage, perhaps lay a secret that would overturn his understanding. 14. The Dead Souls, Instructions. Chapter 14. The Dead Souls, Instructions. Tanjiro's still somewhat unrefined, yet anciently rhythmic, Kagura dance was like a key, opening a brand new door for Arthur. He worked tirelessly, immersing himself in the study of breathing technique. Hinokami Kagura, without a doubt, was a breathing technique. It was a miracle technique capable of stirring up scorching, sun-like energy, and its amplification of bodily functions far exceeded imagination. Afterward, Arthur, combining what Tanjiro had said, repeatedly consulted the ancient texts of the Ubuyashiki clan, further corroborating his own conjecture. Sun breathing, mark, shortened lifespan. A few simple words, yet they pointed to that long-lost, strongest inheritance. Using the Kagura dance as the skeletal foundation, he inversely integrated the essence of the 5 basic breathing techniques. A path unique to Arthur was slowly being forged by him. Time flowed, and the injured gradually recovered. The prematurely recovered Tanjiro would always return to Butterfly Mansion during breaks between missions, to visit his companions and also to call on Arthur. Through repeated close contact, his superhuman sense of smell detected an astonishing transformation in Arthur. It was no longer just a simple scent, but an invisible aura. Merely being close was enough to cause chest tightness and suffocation. It was as if facing a slumbering, prehistoric giant dragon, every inch of space emanating a destructive pressure. Reason told Tanjiro that Mr. Arthur was not an enemy. But the alarm bells from the deepest part of his being rang wildly, urging him to stay away from the dangerous person. This morning, Tanjiro first visited his companions, delighted by their recovery and progress. Then, he habitually walked into the small courtyard where Arthur often stayed. The sight that greeted his eyes made his pupils contract sharply. The once flat rehabilitation ground was now completely unrecognizable. The ground was covered with grotesque pits, their edges shattered. Narrow cracks spread like a spiderweb, seemingly bottomless. The left side was muddy, as if a torrential rain had poured down. The right side was scorched black, as if repeatedly burned by fierce flames. Boom! Accompanied by a dull, thunderous explosion, Arthur's figure appeared in the center of the ground. Hiss! The most efficient breathing sound came, and the surrounding air twisted due to the high temperature, with rolling heat waves rushing towards him. Tanjiro subconsciously raised his hand to wipe his face, feeling a layer of sweat, and even his lips felt a scorching dryness. Mr. Arthur. Tanjiro's voice trembled. Instantly, the suffocating sense of oppression vanished like smoke, as if it had never existed. Arthur slowly turned around, his gaze calm. Mission completed. Tanjiro immediately straightened his back and reported. Yes, the demon in South Street has been slain by me. Arthur nodded slightly and analyzed. Actual combat is the best training. Compared to 2 months ago, your body is much tougher. He casually dispersed his longsword. As he passed Tanjiro, his steps paused slightly. With your current physical capabilities, you are not yet able to perform Hinokami Kagura for extended periods. Water breathing is easy to learn, but it also restricts you. You should try to experience flame breathing if you get the chance. Before he finished speaking, Arthur had already walked towards the lounge, leaving Tanjiro standing alone in place, processing the information. At this moment, the belated Tanjiro was stunned. That terrifying aura around Mr. Arthur, it had disappeared. Inside the lounge, the originally bored Fufu noticed the change in Arthur's aura. A sharp glint flashed in its beast eyes, then it returned to its endearing, clumsy appearance. Arthur was completely unaware of this, merely staring intently at his own palm. Discarding superfluous thoughts, his senses were highly concentrated. The flesh and blood body before him seemed to shed its outer shell, becoming clear and transparent. Blood surged like a river, bones were tightly interlocked, and even the tremor of every muscle fiber was clearly visible. This was the transparent world that Tanjiro's father had once mentioned. A supreme state that discerns the essence and reaches the core. In this state, every bit of the human body's strength could be precisely mobilized, making any technique effortless, and the enemy's movements and intentions had nowhere to hide. More importantly, this ultimate control allowed him to perfectly contain the aura that overflowed due to his cultivation. That was why Tanjiro had felt the oppressive sensation around him disappear just now. But Arthur, after all, was just beginning to grasp it and could not maintain the transparent world for long periods. The mental burden continuously increased, and tinnitus in a feverish head surged over him. He immediately adjusted his breathing frequency, and his heart then beat strongly. The newly generated magic power surged with his blood to all his limbs, nourishing and strengthening his body, and the discomfort slowly receded. Arthur let out a long breath, his eyes eager. Next, master total concentration, constant. Maintaining his breathing and integrating it into his instincts was not difficult for him. Arthur closed his eyes and began adapting to an all-day breathing rhythm. Sun rose and moon set, stars revolved. After a full day and night, total concentration, constant had completely integrated into his every heartbeat and breath. However, the moment his consciousness returned, Arthur was astonished to find that he was not in Butterfly Mansion. Instead, he stood in boundless, pure white space, so silent it was unsettling. Where is this? Dingalingling. A crisp bell sound came from behind him with the wind. Arthur suddenly turned to look. He saw a man dressed in a fiery red houri, with a high ponytail, standing silently in the distance. The Hanafuda earrings hanging by his ears swayed gently with the imperceptible airflow, identical to the pair Tanjiro wore. Arthur's gaze narrowed slightly, and a name long forgotten by the world was on the tip of his tongue. Yorichi Sugikuni. The man did not respond to this tentative call, as if immersed in his own world, his voice filled with an ancient loneliness and deep regret. I actually always wanted to confide in someone. Arthur frowned slightly, quickly analyzing the incredibly bizarre situation before him. A soul? Impossible, there was no throne of heroes in this world. How could a figure from the Sengoku period's soul remain until now? So it was more like a strong obsession, etched into the world. An echo. I am a worthless failure. Yorichi Sugikuni's voice was low, recounting a lifetime of regret. I failed to protect my important wife and child, failed to fulfill my life's duties, and even, never understood my elder brother's heart. Now, I shamelessly entrust this heavy burden to others. Please, I beg you, end Muzan Kibutsuji, and completely eradicate that darkness that should not exist in this world. The moment his words fell, this legendary swordsman bowed his head deeply. The being that once stood at the pinnacle of the world shattered, his body turning into specks of light and vanishing. Gazing at where the figure dissipated, Arthur was silent for a moment, then sighed softly. He had heard about Yorichi Sugikuni's life from Kagaya Ubuyashiki. A tragic swordsman of divine talent, yet plagued by misfortune, who spent his entire life constantly losing. Even if you don't say it, I will do it, Arthur murmured to the empty white space, a sharp glint flashing in his eyes. I came for this, and he clenched his fist, feeling the surging power within him and the peak of martial arts he had just mastered. The preparation phase is over, Muzan Kibutsuji, it's time to drag you out of the shadows. 0 comments 0 vote. 15. The Infinite Train is starting. Come, have a lunch first. Chapter 15. The Infinite Train starts. Come, have a bento first. At the Demon Slayer Corps headquarters, the familiar courtyard was silent. Kagaya Ubuyashiki, who had been waiting there, lowered his gaze, keenly sensing the subtle change in Arthur's aura. Could it be that, Mr. Arthur is ready? Kagaya Ubuyashiki's usually gentle voice was filled with anticipation. Arthur took out a shimmering metallic sphere from his embrace and casually tossed it to Kagaya Ubuyashiki. Miss Tamayo and I only tested it twice. Considering Muzan Kibutsuji's personality, this is already the current limit. So, any new movements regarding the 12 Kazuki recently? Kagaya Ubuyashiki nodded in agreement, tapping his forehead with his fingertip, recalling the various messages sent back by the Corps members. The whereabouts of the 12 Kazuki have always been mysterious. The Corps members can only sift through reports of numerous casualties in various places for clues. Arthur nodded understandingly, motioning for him to continue. Outside Shiden town in the north, a small stream has recently seen frequent drowning incidents among villagers, even being fearfully called the ominous Sanzu River by passing travelers. Over in the red light district, Tengen has already sent his 3 wives to infiltrate and investigate. He believes there might be an upper-ranked demon lurking there. And a train in a western town, over 40 passengers vanished after boarding it. The newspaper directly used a sensational headline like, "The Man-Eating Train." The Man-Eating Train. Arthur's eyebrows rose, and a playful smile curved his lips. In an era where demons run rampant, a train actually earned such an honor. Kagaya Ubuyashiki frowned slightly and added, "This matter is indeed strange, so I have already arranged for Kyojiro to investigate first. Do you also plan to go see it?" Arthur nodded in agreement. After all, this clue sounds the most promising. If there's a 12 Kazuki, great. If not, we'll just make do with the small fry. Kagaya Ubuyashiki said no more. Understood. Do you need other Corps members to assist? Arthur pondered for a moment, then shook his head. Too many people would easily alert the enemy. I'll just take Tanjiro. That child also needs more experience. Fast-moving dividing line. At the train station platform, crowds surged, and the air was filled with the smell of coal and farewells. Arthur and Tanjiro, who was carrying Nezuko's wooden box on his back, walked through the crowd and soon found the man who shone like a flame. The flame pillar, Kyojiro Rengoku. I didn't expect to be on this mission with Mr. Arthur. I will work even harder. Kyojiro Rengoku's voice was loud, his eyes shining brightly, and he was carrying two rather heavy large packages. Such strange behavior caused the surrounding passengers to look away and avoid him. Arthur looked at the imposing flame pillar and raised a hand in greeting. "Sorry to keep you waiting, Kyojuro. Did you find anything during your previous investigation?" Kyojuro Rengoku immediately shook his head and explained. "I investigated the repair shop. Although I encountered a small problem, I can confirm it has nothing to do with the train disappearance." Arthur frowned and pressed. "At the repair shop, did they find any abnormalities with the train itself?" Kyojuro Rengoku shook his head definitively. "No. They insisted the Infinity Train was safe and sound, which is why it's back in service tonight." Upon hearing this, Arthur's brow furrowed unconsciously, and his gaze swept across the platform. The afterglow of the setting sun dyed the platform a warm red, and people dragging luggage formed a long line, boarding the train one after another. Even with its limited capacity, this Taishura train was now packed with at least 200 people. They specifically chose to operate at night. "If that thing is really on the train," Arthur murmured, a hint of solemnity on his face. Kyojuro Rengoku nodded heavily, his expression serious. "Indeed, we absolutely cannot let tragedy happen." After a brief exchange of information, Arthur pulled out Tanjiro, who had been timidly hiding behind him. "Kyojuro, do you remember this kid?" Kyojuro Rengoku looked closely, then waved and laughed. "Of course I remember, the Guko Shonen from the pillar meeting. I'm deeply impressed by you and your sister." His gaze fell on the wooden box on Tanjiro's back, then he nodded solemnly. "No need to worry, what the master approves, I, Kyojuro Rengoku, fully support. Let's work hard together." "Yes." Tanjiro straightened his body, responding loudly, his eyes filled with gratitude. Woo! Woo! A long and sharp whistle pierced the twilight, and the conductor waved and shouted at the carriage door, urging the last passengers. The three no longer delayed and followed the crowd towards the train. "Speaking of which, Kyojuro." Arthur glanced at the bulging packages in his hand, his tone puzzled. "What exactly have you been carrying all this way?" "Good question. It's premium beef hot pot bento. Mr. Arthur, would you like to try one?" Arthur. Degree. Eating bento before a mission. Kyojuro, you're setting up that flag a little too blatantly. ... Accompanied by the roar of wheels grinding on rails and thick steam, the Infinity Train slowly pulled away from the platform, disappearing into the deepening night. Trains of this era did not yet have fixed seats, so the three simply found empty spots and sat down. During their conversation on the platform, Arthur had already experienced Kyojuro Rengoku's loud voice. But when he placed the two large packages on the small table with a clunk, tore open the bento wrapping paper, and began to devour his meal, Arthur truly understood what a walking noise source was. "Yumai, yumai." Every bite of rice Kyojuro took was accompanied by a deafening exclamation of praise. His volume was so great it seemed capable of tearing off the entire carriage ceiling. The passengers in neighboring seats were clearly unable to endure this enthusiastic, culinary symphony, and, frowning, stood up and fled to other carriages. Arthur reached out and covered Fufu's ears, looking helplessly at the flame pillar, who was oblivious to his surroundings. "I say, Kyojuro, we're here to investigate the man-eating train. Aren't you afraid of scaring the demon away by being so ostentatious?" "Wouldn't that be even better?" Kyojuro Rengoku responded with a mouth full of food, his words muffled but self-righteous. He quickly finished one bento and let out a satisfied sigh. "Mr. Arthur, if our presence can deter the demon and prevent it from appearing, wouldn't that mean saving over 200 lives on this train? Isn't that a great thing to be happy about?" Tanjiro, sitting nearby, nodded repeatedly, his eyes full of agreement. He wasn't afraid of fighting, he simply didn't want any more innocent people to die. Kyojuro Rengoku's theory suited him perfectly. Arthur looked at the pair of typical hot-blooded idiots in front of him, raised a hand to his forehead, and sighed softly. "Your desire to save people is good, I can understand that. But don't forget, as long as Muzan Kibutsuji, the root cause, remains, tragedy will never cease." Kyojuro Rengoku and Tanjiro naturally understood this principle. But reality was cruel. The Demon King was so deeply hidden that the Demon Slayer Corps had found it difficult to track him for hundreds of years, let alone slay him. Kyojuro Rengoku put down his second bento box, his expression instantly turning serious, his sharp gaze fixed on Arthur. "Do you have a way to find Muzan Kibutsuji?" Arthur shook his head, his tone calm but with a hint of certainty. I won't go looking for him, instead, I'll make him come looking for me. Tanjiro gasped in surprise. Mr. Arthur. Are you planning to use yourself as bait? Kyojuro Rengoku's face was solemn. The Demon King's power is unfathomable, that's too dangerous. How confident are you? Arthur tapped the table with his fingertip, a confident smile on his face. If everything goes according to plan, roughly, 70%. Kyojuro Rengoku took a deep breath, his eyes becoming resolute. Understood. I, Kyojuro Rengoku, will fully cooperate with your plan. With that, he put away his earlier boisterousness, picked up the remaining bento, and began to eat quickly yet silently, as if he were a different person. The night completely swallowed the last ray of light outside the window. A thin, pale-faced conductor appeared silently at the carriage connection. He bowed slightly, but his eyes showed no emotion. Good evening, please show your ticket. His voice had an eerily flat quality, as if it didn't come from a living person. Arthur's gaze narrowed slightly, and his fingertips moved under the table. 0 comments 0 vote. 16. The train is full of dangers. The dragon is baring its fangs. Chapter 16. The train is full of dangers. The dragon bears its fangs. On the Infinity Train, the night was as black as ink. Amidst the monotonous sound of wheels grinding on the tracks, Kyojuro Rengoku and Tanjiro successively handed their tickets to the conductor. Arthur's gaze swept over the conductor, who exuded an aura of decadence and weariness, and a hint of suspicion crept into his brows. Strange, is it because night shifts are so debilitating? Why do I feel like there's something off about this person? Despite his doubts, Arthur had no standing to stop the conductor from checking tickets. After the conductor punched holes in Kyojuro Rengoku and Tanjiro's tickets, Arthur also handed over his own ticket. Click. The soft sound of the ticket being punched was exceptionally clear in the quiet carriage. Then, the conductor, with heavy steps as if his feet were filled with lead, trudged towards the next carriage. Tanjiro, with a hint of apprehension, sought Kyojuro Rengoku's guidance on the mysteries of flame breathing. Arthur took the newly punched ticket, his eyes narrowing, and a knowing smile playing on his lips. So that's it, no wonder I felt something was off. The problem isn't the conductor, but the ticket itself. The moment he took the ticket, he clearly sensed a sinister energy fluctuation emanating from it. The enemy was trying to infiltrate his body and exert some subtle influence. Unfortunately, this petty trick was nothing but a display of incompetence to him. A blood demon art that uses the ticket as a medium to remotely control all passengers. This demon's strength is decent, it seems this trip won't be in vain. Arthur lightly pinched the ticket with his fingertips, and it instantly turned to ash. He looked up and saw that Kyojuro Rengoku and Tanjiro, who were across from him, had stopped talking and both fallen into a deep sleep. It's not direct mind control, but a hypnotic technique. Thanks to Kyojuro Rengoku's earlier clearing of the area, only the three of them remained in this carriage, allowing Arthur to act without restraint. A complex and precise exorcism rune quickly formed at his fingertips, and he lightly tapped it on their foreheads, instantly breaking the hypnotic effect of the blood demon art. Nezuko's startled gasp came from inside the wooden box. The exorcism technique brought with it an instinctive suppression and fear for her. Hearing his sister's movement, Tanjiro groggily opened his eyes and saw Arthur scrutinizing every detail within the carriage. I just fell asleep. Kyojuro Rengoku lightly rubbed his temples, rising a step faster than Tanjiro, his hand already on the hilt of the Nichiren blade hidden beneath his haori. Stay alert, Guko Shonen. That must have been a demon's trick. Kyojuro is right, the demon lurking on the Infinity Train can cast a wider-range hypnosis. The opponent must have used this ability to avoid being detected by others until now. Arthur said, lightly tapping the inner wall of the carriage with his knuckles, his eyes taking on a playful look. Kyojuro Rengoku's expression became serious. To be able to cast such a wider-range blood demon art, it seems that it truly is one of the 12 Kazuki on the Infinity Train. At the same time, Tanjiro's nose twitched, his face suddenly changed, and he exclaimed. Mr. Arthur, Mr. Rengoku, the smell of the demon in the carriage is getting stronger. But I can't find its location. No need to look. Arthur suddenly clenched his fist and slammed it out, and the sturdy inner wall of the carriage burst open, revealing continuously wriggling, nauseating flesh and blood. The entire Infinity Train is merging with the demon. Nani? Kyojuro Rengoku and Tanjiro both looked horrified, staring in disbelief at the living flesh. When they looked at the floor beneath their feet again, they both felt a wave of physiological discomfort. Because it hadn't attacked proactively before, even the keen-nosed Tanjiro couldn't detect anything unusual. Arthur no longer paid attention to the wriggling and proliferating flesh, his sharp gaze fixed on the front of the train. Kyojuro, Tanjiro, you two are responsible for patrolling the other carriages to protect the passengers and prevent the demon from taking them hostage. I'll go ahead and confront it. Kyojuro Rengoku asked in a deep voice, is this also part of the plan? A cold, gleaming longsword instantly appeared in Arthur's hand, and he said without looking back. Yes, this is also part of the plan. Before he finished speaking, Arthur's toes touched the ground, and his figure vanished like a ghost at the carriage connection. Tanjiro exclaimed in surprise, so fast. My eyes can't keep up at all. Now is not the time for exclamations, Guko Shonen. Kyojuro Rengoku's Nichiren blade clanged as it was drawn, and his breathing technique instantly adjusted to its optimal state. I can protect the passengers in 5 carriages, can you handle the rest? Tanjiro's eyes were firm, and he nodded heavily. No problem, Nezuko and I can fight side by side. Good, then I'll leave it to you. With that, Kyojuro Rengoku crouched down, and like an arrow shot from a bow, he charged with his blade towards the 5 carriages he was responsible for. Unlike Kyojuro Rengoku, who was speeding through the carriages, Arthur had already broken out of the window and was moving with the wind. His figure left a trail in the night sky as he darted towards the front of the Infinity Train. In an instant, Arthur locked onto a strange figure dressed in a tuxedo-like outfit. Here he comes, I didn't expect such a spectacular entrance. Enmu tilted his head, a doll-like rigid and eerie smile on his face, not at all surprised by Arthur's arrival. Not only can you be immune to my hypnosis, but you can also fly in the air. I say, are you really human? At least not trash like you. Arthur's gaze immediately fell on Enmu's eyes, his left eye was engraved with, lower rank, and his right eye read, 1. Lower rank 1, very good, you should be qualified to transmit information directly to Muzan Kibutsuji, right? According to the information provided by Tamayo, the Demon King could control all demons under his command, with stronger control the closer they were. Even thousands of miles away, the Demon King could obtain some key information, enabling information sharing. As the head of the lower ranks among the 12 Kazuki, Enmu could definitely share what he saw in real time with Muzan Kibutsuji. However, upon hearing Arthur's words, Enmu's grinning expression first stiffened, then turned into a morbid excitement, and he spread his hands. Who knows, after all, who dares to speculate on that adult's true intentions? Arthur scoffed dismissively. No one dares to speculate. Then we'll see. Before Enmu could speak again, the surrounding air suddenly solidified, and an invisible pressure fiercely gripped his heart. Dragon breathing, thunder style, light fang. In an instant, dazzling lightning tore through the deep darkness of the night. Arthur, with immense power, charged towards Enmu with unparalleled impact. The longsword, accompanied by thunder, was like the sharp fangs of a giant dragon biting its prey, precise and fierce, slashing across the demon's neck. Crimson blood spurted high like a fountain, and Enmu's headless body fell limply. Seeing this, Arthur's lips curled into a cold, mocking smile. You really have a soft spot for these deceptive little tricks. You've already merged with the entire train, yet you still want to trick me with such a ploy. Oh my, have you already seen through it? How boring, I was still hoping to see a hint of fear on your face. A giant pillar of flesh suddenly proliferated from the outer wall of the carriage, coiling around Enmu's fallen head and reattaching it. Enmu's doll-like face was full of playful mockery. But I truly didn't expect that a mere human could not only fly but also release lightning like a demon. But it's a pity, my body has completely merged with this train. You can absolutely never kill me. In an instant, more pillars of flesh furiously proliferated and surged from all directions, stacking layer upon layer, completely enveloping Arthur. On each pillar of flesh, giant, bloodshot, eerie, and hideous eyes opened. Blood demon art, forced deep sleep eye. This was Enmu's true killer move. Its hypnotic effect was dozens of times stronger than the slow-acting technique on the tickets. Even if this demon slayer's movement technique was incredibly fast, it would be absolutely impossible for him to evade this overwhelming visual lock. Just as Enmu was secretly pleased, thinking victory was within his grasp. Those hideous pillars of flesh, without any warning, burst into roaring flames. 0 comments 0 vote. 17. A Game Within a Game, The Attraction of the Blue-Red Spider Lily. Chapter 17. Game Within a Game, The Attraction of Blue-Red Spider Lily. Dragon breathing, flame form, burning wings. Arthur's crisscrossing slashes were like a giant dragon flapping its wings, and the scorching flames instantly shattered the layered pillars of flesh, the brilliant firelight reflecting Enmu's face, twisted in horror. How can this be? Why are you the only one who can't be hypnotized? A trash technique that doesn't even count as a demonic eye, and you think it can affect me? Arthur's voice was cold, his gaze passing over the screaming Enmu, piercing directly towards the locomotive behind him, which was constantly spewing thick smoke. Even if Enmu had completely merged with the infinity train, his vital point still existed. At the connection of the train's head, the most concentrated demonic energy undoubtedly indicated the location of his true body. Arthur suddenly inhaled a large amount of air, and a crimson magical power radiated from his body, like a ferocious blood-colored cape fluttering behind him. Since the reconnaissance and the search for the true body were both complete, it was time to make this runaway train stop completely. You said you were one with the train, and absolutely unkillable, right? I'll show you just how simple it is to hit a stationary target. Arthur pushed off with his feet, his body suddenly shooting forward, his speed even more rapid than the speeding train. He stood firmly on the tracks ahead, and above his longsword, wind pressure rapidly condensed. Dragon breathing, wind form, roar. Where the sword's edge pointed, a raging storm transformed into a ferocious tornado, instantly engulfing the entire train head. Countless wind blades furiously cut through the proliferating pillars of flesh, and beneath the steel train body, stark white bones were revealed. That was precisely the demon's spine, hidden at the bottom of the train's head. Arthur's figure flashed into midair, his longsword drawn back fully, and he launched another attack. Dragon breathing, rock form, savage tail. Clang. The intense clang of metal was deafening, like the ringing of an ancient temple bell. This strike was powerful and heavy, like a giant beast swinging its long tail, incredibly violent. The train's head was forcibly torn from the tracks in a truly shocking manner, leaving only the carriages to continue sliding due to inertia. This was the purest, most primal aesthetic of violence. Screech. The uncoupled carriages slowly came to a halt, their wheels grinding against the tracks with a teeth-grating shriek. The pillar of flesh connecting to Enmu's head was also mercilessly severed by the storm, leaving only the dying demon to futilely recoalesce his broken body. Damn it, it shouldn't be like this. My plan was so perfect, yet I couldn't even devour a single person. It's all their fault. It's all those damn demon slayers' fault. Why could just 2 people cut off so many of my tentacles? Why would that demon girl protect humans? And that terrifying guy, why was hypnosis completely ineffective on him? Why can humans be this strong? Just as Enmu was cursing maniacally, Arthur had already arrived in front of him, casually picking up the rapidly decaying head. Tell Muzan Kibutsuji for me, the blue spider lily is with me. Before his words finished, he took out a vacuum medical bag from his inside of which was a blue flower, carefully preserved. Enmu, the demon, whose mouth had long since shattered, could not speak, but his remaining will was cheering wildly. That was a craving from the deepest part of every cell, the supreme desire of the demon king who had bestowed his demon blood upon him, for the plant before him. A few seconds later, Arthur flicked off the ashes clinging to his palm, held the so-called blue spider lily up to his eyes, and a faint smile touched his lips. Now, we'll see if he takes the bait. On the other side, Kyojuro Rengoku and Tanjiro were carrying passengers to the open ground, again and again. Although Arthur had only selectively destroyed the Infinity Train's locomotive, the violent tornado storm couldn't just stop on command. The subsequent carriages were consequently impacted, and the passengers, still in a hypnotic state, all suffered varying degrees of bumps and scrapes. Taking advantage of the break in moving passengers, Kyojuro Rengoku summoned his Kasugai Crow, preparing to report the situation on the Infinity Train to headquarters first. I've generally understood the situation. Mr. Arthur, will Muzan Kibutsuji really target you? Arthur counted the number of passengers and shook his head. I said before, at most, it's about a 70% chance. Tanjiro, who had just carried down 2 more passengers, looked confused. Why, didn't you say Muzan Kibutsuji has been searching for the blue spider lily his entire life? Arthur shrugged helplessly. So what? Who made the one I have a fake? A fake? X2. Keep your voices down, we can't be sure if there are other demons lurking nearby. Facing their shocked gazes, Arthur reached into his bosom again and pulled out the previous medical bag. The blue spider lily inside had long since vanished. That blue spider lily was created by me using projection magic. Because I referenced Ms. Tamayo's research data from over the years, it could achieve a 70% likeness. Oh, by the way, projection magic is a special ability from my hometown, which can replicate items that have existed in reality. Not only is it extremely difficult to cast, and consumes a vast amount of energy, but its duration is only a few short minutes, making it quite impractical. After hearing Arthur's explanation, Kyojuro Rengoku and Tanjiro finally understood. It turned out that the blue spider lily was fake from beginning to end. Arthur was completely trying to catch a tiger with an empty hand. Kyojuro Rengoku nodded repeatedly. Not only can it lure Muzan Kibutsuji to reveal himself, but it also prevents him from truly getting what he wants. It's truly a well thought out plan. Arthur waved his hand. Let's talk about these things after the matter is completely resolved. Alright, let's all put in more effort, there are still quite a few passengers left. Meanwhile, as Arthur and the others were handling the aftermath, a demon was rapidly approaching the location of Enmu's demise. Akaza moved nimbly through the mountains, his speed like a bullet from a gun as he weaved and dodged. His location was closest to Enmu, so he received Muzan Kibutsuji's command. He was ordered, at all costs, to eliminate the 3 Demon Slayer Corps swordsmen and seize the blue spider lily from their hands. As an upper rank of the 12 Kazuki, Akaza knew how deep his master's obsession with the blue spider lily was. Coupled with the constantly echoing urges in his mind, he finally arrived near the Infinity Train wreckage half an hour later. I see them, Demon Slayers. A surging fighting spirit erupted from Akaza's body, and he instantly flashed in front of Tanjiro, punching directly at his head, a vital point. Flame breathing, second form, rising scorching sun. An upward curving slash fiercely met the demon's iron fist. Kyojuro Rengoku's swift swordsmanship, like a blazing flame, not only precisely neutralized Akaza's attack but also left a deep, bony visible wound on his arm. Only then did Tanjiro suddenly awaken, quickly drawing his Nichiren blade from his waist and adopting a defensive stance. A demon, Kyojuro Rengoku's brows furrowed. Guko Shonen, retreat to the back carriages and find Mr. Arthur. This demon is not one you can handle. As his words fell, his eyes were fixed on Akaza, whose demonic energy was unusually dense before him. The opponent wore a martial arts gi suitable for movement, his skin pale beneath his peach-colored short hair, and his golden eyes were clearly inscribed with the characters, Upper Rank, and 3. Upper Rank 3. Unlike the highly vigilant Kyojuro Rengoku, Akaza calmly retreated a dozen meters, casually shook his arm, and his previously severed limb healed completely in an instant. A beautiful counterattack. You are a Hashira, aren't you? Kyojuro Rengoku asked in a deep voice. Didn't you come for the blue spider lily? Why did you attack Guko Shonen first? Akaza sneered. Isn't that obvious? Weak humans don't deserve to live in this world, just looking at them makes me sick to my stomach. 0 comments 0 vote. 18. Behead the Immortal Upper Moon, the Black Hole Prisoner. Chapter 18. Behead the Immortal Upper Moon, the Black Hole Prisoner. Hearing Akaza's reply, Kyojuro Rengoku's face darkened, and his tone turned cold. It seems our judgment of the value of things is completely at odds. The strong have a responsibility to protect the weak, not to abuse their talents to bully them, and certainly not to line their own pockets. Akaza's face still bore that cynical smile. He placed one hand on his hip, just about to speak again, when he suddenly felt a sharp flash of light streak past him, incredibly fast. Chi. In a flash, Arthur, who had severed the demon's head, appeared silently several meters behind Akaza, the fine electric arcs dancing around him slowly fading. If you can fight, don't argue, Kyojuro. Why are you wasting words on a demon? Arthur's movements were so fast that neither Kyojuro Rengoku nor Akaza could track him. Kyojuro Rengoku opened his mouth, momentarily unsure how to respond. As the flame pillar of the Demon Slayer Corps, he had never hesitated for a second when slaying demons. But this demon was Upper Rank 3, a powerful entity that no pillar-level swordsman had managed to slay in nearly a century. After sensing the abnormally intense and ominous demonic aura from the opponent, Kyojuro Rengoku had originally intended to stabilize the situation first and stall for a moment. Once Guko Shonen called for powerful reinforcements, they would then work together to annihilate the opponent. Who would have thought that Arthur would solve this upper-rank demon with just one strike? Arthur turned around, looking at the headless demon body that still stood upright, a hint of surprise flashing in his eyes. Although its head had been severed, why hadn't it turned to ash and dissipated yet? Just as he was about to deliver another sword strike to completely finish off the opponent, the headless demon suddenly darted back more than 10 meters. The flesh at its severed neck rapidly wriggled and gushed, and in a blink of an eye, a brand new head reformed. Ha! Ha! That was just. Akaza gasped for breath, his newly formed face filled with terror and lingering fear. He subconsciously raised a hand to touch his neck. That strike just now was too swift, so swift that even he himself thought he was certainly dead. Unexpectedly, at the brink of death, his tenacious survival instinct and intense unwillingness erupted. It transformed into a strange power, forcefully helping him overcome the fatal weakness of demons dying when beheaded. Kyojuro Rengoku and Tanjiro, who had rushed over, instantly changed their expressions. The sight before them made them almost disbelieve their eyes. An upper-rank demon could even regenerate its head. Tanjiro exclaimed in shock, how can such a thing happen? A demon that can't be killed even by beheading, is the only way to completely eliminate it with the sun. Arthur observed the heavily panting Akaza with interest, a flicker of thought in his deep eyes. So that's how it is. When a demon becomes powerful enough to a certain stage, it can even overcome fatal injuries like beheading. Upper rank 3, you've provided me with quite important information. Akaza, upon hearing this, immediately flew into a rage. Bastard, how dare you treat me as your experiment? Technique deployment. Akaza suddenly took a stance, and a giant snowflake array pattern instantly appeared under his feet, glowing faintly. This was his unique blood demon art, which allowed him to keenly sense every trace of fighting spirit emitted by his opponent through the array. In this state, Akaza's sensory abilities would receive an incredible boost. He could quickly capture the enemy's every move and deliver precise and deadly strikes in an instant. The snowflake array burst forth with intense light. In his perception, the fighting spirit emitted by Kyojuro Rengoku and Tanjiro was clearly visible, with nowhere to hide. No, wait, where was that guy with the platinum longsword? Why couldn't he sense his fighting spirit? Akaza suddenly looked up. There were indeed 3 people in his vision. But Arthur, standing not far away, seemed to blend with the surrounding night and vegetation, his aura ethereal, like nature itself. Akaza's internal alarm bells rang loudly, as if he had thought of some terrifying possibility. He stomped hard on the ground, his body shooting out like a cannonball, fearing that even a moment's delay would result in a thunderous strike. Accompanied by a piercing sonic boom, Akaza, moving at high speed, charged directly towards Tanjiro. He clearly intended to eliminate a weaker opponent first. Flame-breathing first form unknowing fire. Kyojuro Rengoku's fighting spirit was high, without the slightest retreat. He also met the attack head-on with a burst sprint sword technique, precisely intercepting Akaza's surprise attack. In a flash, the two briefly clashed in midair before quickly separating. Akaza did not stop, his body twisting, and he once again fiercely attacked Tanjiro. Destructive kill annihilation type, the farce ends here. A calm yet undeniable voice sounded, and Arthur's figure ghost-like cut into the battlefield. Dragon-breathing water form raging scales. Akaza's unstoppable fist slammed heavily onto the flat side of Arthur's raised sword. The feeling was as if he had instantly fallen into an endless, deep-sea vortex with surging undercurrents. His originally determined and furious attack was mysteriously absorbed and stuck by the sword's flat side. His desire to pull back was now a luxury. Beneath the calm surface of the sea, undercurrents surged, and sword shadows reflected shimmering ripples in the night. In just an instant, Akaza was dismembered, his severed limbs flying in all directions. I don't believe it. Akaza, having lost his arms and legs, let out an unwilling roar, frantically circulating his blood, attempting to regenerate. There's no significant increase in strength, speed, or defense, it's merely overcoming the weakness of beheading. Arthur took a step forward, his longsword stabbing down like lightning, firmly pinning Akaza's attempting to reconstruct body to the ground. He spread his right hand, magic power surging in his palm, and a complex and precise spell pattern took shape. Simulated celestial body black hole. The profound spell transferred from his palm to the ground, instantly transforming into a pitch-black void that swallowed all light. Akaza, who had been struggling violently and trying to get up, only felt an irresistible terrifying suction, his body slamming back to the ground, unable to move even a single finger. After finishing the binding spell, Arthur leisurely squatted in front of Akaza, unhurriedly taking out a small medical pouch from his inner shirt pocket. "You're here for the blue spider lily too, right? Can Muzan Kibutsuji talk to me personally?" Akaza, spread-eagled and firmly suppressed on the ground, gritted his teeth, his face contorted in a grimace, seemingly bound by some force and completely unable to speak. Arthur casually snapped his fingers, slightly reducing the magic power supplied to the spell. As the binding force slightly lessened, Akaza immediately roared hoarsely. "How did you do it? Answer me, how did you step into that highest realm?" Akaza's expression in his roar suddenly froze, his originally furious and deranged expression instantly receded, but his gaze was fixed on the blue spider lily in Arthur's hand. Arthur looked at the demon's drastically contrasting and strange behavior, nodding thoughtfully. "So that's how it is, too far away, so no way to directly perform precise control. Listen carefully, Muzan Kibutsuji, I'll only say this once." Arthur's voice was not loud, but it carried an undeniable authority. "1 month from now, at midnight, on the summit of Mt. Nadagumo, I will be waiting for you there with the blue spider lily. If you haven't appeared by the deadline, then say goodbye to the eternal life you most desire." With that, Arthur put away the medical pouch and turned to walk towards Kyojuro Rengoku and Tanjiro, who were waiting nearby. The important information about upper-rank demons not dying even after beheading must be communicated and popularized throughout the Demon Slayer Corps as soon as possible. How much longer until the members of the Kikuchi arrive? Kyojuro Rengoku cast a solemn glance at the completely suppressed Akaza, then looked at the deep night, and said seriously. "They will surely arrive before dawn. As for this upper-rank demon, how should it be handled?" Arthur smiled helplessly. "Since it won't die even if its head is cut off, we'll just have to wait for the sun to come out and see." Kyojuro Rengoku nodded heavily, stepped to Akaza's side, and stood solemnly. "In that case, I shall guard him here, just in case." Actually, Arthur wanted to tell him that as long as his magic power was not exhausted, this binding spell would not dissipate on its own. But considering that all the passengers had been safely rescued and the 3 of them had no other urgent matters, he simply let him be. Tanjiro looked at the calm Arthur and the vigilant Kyojuro Rengoku, involuntarily gripping his Nichiren blade, his eyes filled with unwillingness and disappointment. On the Infinity Train, he was easily hypnotized by a blood demon art. Facing the fierce attacks of upper rank 3, he was even more powerless to fight back. If not for Arthur and Kyojuro-san repeatedly coming to his rescue, he would probably have died long ago. "Cheer up, Guko Shonen." Kyojuro Rengoku extended his large, fan-like hand and slapped Tanjiro's shoulder hard, his voice booming like a bell. "You are still young, I believe your future will become incredibly strong." Tisk, how could such a weak, pathetic brat become strong? Muzan Kibutsuji's will had clearly departed. Akaza, lying on the ground, regained consciousness and immediately spat out a sarcastic taunt. "The weak must know their place. Weaklings are simply..." Bang! The suction force of the black hole spell suddenly increased dramatically. Akaza, who hadn't managed to close his mouth, cried out in pain, having bitten off his own tongue. After the opponent, obediently, buried his head in the mud, he dared not say another word. Arthur nonchalantly clapped his hands, as if dusting off non-existent dirt, and turned his head to look at Tanjiro, who was still a little downcast. "What, you're not actually taking this guy's demonic nonsense seriously, are you?" Kyojuro Rengoku also encouraged him again. "After we get back, let me personally train you, Guko Shonen." Kyojuro-san, my surname is Kamado Tanjiro." Tanjiro corrected softly, but then, as if remembering something, he suddenly looked up at Arthur, a hint of inquiry in his eyes. "Arthur-san, what was that highest realm the opponent mentioned just now?" 0 comments 0 vote. 19. The two sides move and conflict breaks out. Chapter 19. Movements of both sides, conflict breaks out. Infinity Castle. Within this bizarre, upside-down, and intertwined architectural complex, several powerful demons were once again summoned. Unlike the lower-ranked demons who appeared panicked, each of them displayed distinct personalities. They either stood or sat, calmly awaiting Muzan Kibutsuji's arrival. Thrum! The sudden plucking of a string sounded, and the figures of Muzan Kibutsuji and Nakame solidified before the demons. Akaza is dead, a corner of the 12 Kazuki is missing. Without any greetings or pleasantries, Muzan Kibutsuji immediately dropped this news on the upper-rank demons present. Are you serious? It's Akaza-sama. I never thought something like this would happen. In this oppressive atmosphere, a young man spoke his opinion on the matter with an extremely cheerful and optimistic tone. He wore a religious-style red hat, and beneath his white oak hair were a pair of rainbow-colored pupils, yet they were hollow and devoid of emotion. His name was Doma, upper rank 2 of the 12 Kazuki. Muzan Kibutsuji glanced at Doma with a cold expression and continued. I have now received news about the blue spider lily, but I am growing increasingly disappointed in all of you. As he spoke, an invisible, terrifying pressure emanated from Muzan Kibutsuji. The demons felt the blood flowing within them stagnate, and their hearts felt as if they were tightly clutched by an invisible hand, causing unbearable pain. Because Akaza was too useless, I lost the chance to obtain the blue spider lily. Because you all are too lax, I must actively step into the trap prepared by the Demon Slayer Corps. Is there really any difference between upper-rank demons and lower-rank demons? You're all just useless. The angrier Muzan Kibutsuji became, the darker the ink-like marks in his crimson eyes grew, and the surging pressure rendered the demons silent and speechless. Facing their enraged master, even Doma, who usually wore a playful smile, sobered his expression and respectfully prostrated himself, no one daring to speak up at this moment. Muzan Kibutsuji's tyrannical gaze swept over the demons one by one, and after a long while, he finally suppressed the urge to crush them all. Just then, the ink-like color in the Demon King's eyes surged, and a thought suddenly flashed through his mind, which was already filled with rage. He didn't need to fall into the Demon Slayer Corp's so-called trap at all. Although they held the trump card of the blue spider lily, he wasn't without cards to play himself. For the next month, I will command all demons to act, you are no exception. Muzan Kibutsuji hastily informed all upper ranks of their mission, then vanished amidst Nakim's biwa music. After the Demon King left, the prostrate upper-rank demons slowly rose to their feet. Doma opened his golden fan, covering the lower half of his face, and spoke with a hint of lingering fear. Muzan-sama's power is too great, I almost thought I was truly going to die. Eek, Duma-sama, please don't say such inauspicious things. Hantangu, who had 2 horns on his head and resembled a timid old man, clutched his head, his voice tinged with a whimper. Although his eyes didn't bear inscriptions like other demons, he was indeed the genuine upper rank 4. Akaza-sama, it must have been over 90 years since we last met, and I never thought that last time would be goodbye forever. Gyoko, whose upper body extended from an oval vase, spoke in an inexplicable tone, but it was certainly not sadness. His appearance was vastly different from a human's, mouths grew where his eyes should be, and there was an eyeball on his forehead and another where his mouth should be, each inscribed with upper rank and 5, respectively. Looking at the upper-rank demons around her who had completely relaxed, Daki, with her long white hair falling to her waist and hips, and her revealing attire, scoffed. You all have nothing else to say, right? Then my brother and I will go carry out Muzan-sama's mission first. With that, several sashes extended from her waist, enveloped her entire body, and she vanished instantly. The demons glanced at the spot where Daki had been and all showed disdain. If not for Muzan-sama's affection, and Gyutaro's protection, what right did this arrogant little girl have to be ranked upper rank 6? Alright, Daki is not wrong, everyone go back and prepare. Kokushibo, as upper rank 1, spoke for the first time. His voice was calm yet authoritative, instantly quelling the demons' desire to continue conversing. And so, the upper rank demons used their various abilities and left the Infinity Castle. Demon Slayer Corps Headquarters. After listening to Kyojuro Rengoku's full report, the most hot-tempered Sanemi Shinazugawa slammed the table and thundered. Are you kidding me? Upper-rank demons don't die even if their heads are cut off. Uzui Tengen added, not just that, if even upper-rank demons aren't afraid of decapitation, then Muzan Kibutsuji, as the Demon King. Kocho Shinobu calmly analyzed, judging from the situation with upper-rank 3, sunlight is still their weakness. Iguro Obanai's voice was low, so we can only try our best to stall for time and wait for the sun to come out to defeat them. Upon hearing this, a vein bulged on Sanemi Shinazugawa's forehead, and he sharply turned to glare at Arthur, who was sitting nearby teasing Fufu, and roared. Why did you set the time for midnight? How can humans fight demons for a full 6 hours? In such a crucial plan, you only tell us now. You did this on purpose, didn't you? The other pillars remained silent, but their gazes towards Arthur clearly showed dissatisfaction. Kagaya Ubuyashiki quickly reached out, wanting to smooth things over, but Arthur, who was sitting cross-legged, spoke first. You're right, I did it on purpose. Nani, the pillars, expressions all changed, they couldn't understand why he would do such a thing. Arthur continued, first, Muzan Kibutsuji is a cowardly scumbag. If he doesn't see hope of victory, he will immediately burrow into some ditch and hide, not showing his face for 100 years. And then, the second point, why am I only telling you now? Because I never expected you to be of much help from the beginning, I am enough to deal with Muzan Kibutsuji on my own. A vein throbbed on Tsunemi Shinazugawa's forehead, his right hand already on the hilt of his Nichiren blade, as he growled through gritted teeth. I really still want to cut down this bastard right now. Tsunemi, this plan was decided jointly by me and Arthurson. Kagaya Ubuyashiki spoke in time, forcing the almost berserk Tsunemi Shinazugawa to calm down. Then, he looked sideways at Arthur, whose expression remained indifferent, and bowed slightly. But Arthurson, according to our previous discussions, the Demon Slayer Corps would help you clear away unnecessary obstacles, wouldn't it? Arthur shook his head, sorry, I changed my mind temporarily. Judging by the power displayed by upper rank 3, I'm afraid you really can't be of much help. Oh, except for the stone pillar. His utterly blunt assessment instantly ignited the anger of several pillars. The pillars all stood up abruptly, glaring at Arthur, who was still teasing the pure white cub. Kyojuro Rengoku quickly stood in the middle, separating everyone, and said in a loud voice. Everyone, please calm down. Although I am also disheartened by Arthurson's assessment, upper rank 3's power was indeed despairingly strong. As the universally recognized good-natured person among the 9 pillars, Kyojuro Rengoku successfully made the enraged pillars temporarily restrain their impulse to draw their swords. Uzui Tengen frowned, staring at Arthur. I won't give up fighting just because of someone's words, unless you can brilliantly provide proof that will convince me. Hearing this, Arthur finally looked up, a playful smile on his lips, and pointed towards the open space outside the courtyard. All right, then let's go over there and I'll show you. 0 comments 0 vote, 20. 1 strike and it's gone. Reveal the mystery of transparency. Chapter 20. 1 strike, 1 collapse. Revealing the mystery of transparency. Inside the spacious courtyard of the Demon Slayer Corps headquarters, several pillars stood in the shade, their gazes fixed on the tense standoff at the center. Kanroji Mitsuri covered her mouth with both hands, her beautiful face filled with conflict. How did it come to this? Kocho Shinobu smiled bitterly and shook her head. Anyone would get angry facing such provocation, this situation is truly helpless. Kyojuro Rengoku sighed repeatedly. If only someone could step in to stop it. Gyome Himahima heard the unspoken meaning in his words, clasped his hands together, his expression calm and unperturbed. Namu Amida Butsu, Mr. Arthur's actions must have a deeper meaning. Is that truly the case? Aside from the inscrutable and silent Tomioka Gyu and Tokido Muichiro, the love pillar, insect pillar, and flame pillar were all filled with doubts. Looking back at the open space in the center of the courtyard, Arthur's gaze swept over Uzui Tengen, Tsunemi Shinazugawa, and Iguro Obanai one by one. Then he slightly raised his hand, his tone flat yet extremely oppressive. What are you waiting for? Attack. As soon as these words were spoken, it was like a spark falling into boiling oil, instantly igniting the fighting spirit of the 3 pillars, and a fierce battle was on the verge of breaking out. Sound breathing. 5th form, string performance. Uzui Tengen roared as he drew the twin blades from his back, a ninja's secret technique infused with gunpowder, the rotating blades creating a deafening roar as he charged at Arthur first. Serpent breathing. 2nd form, narrow head poison fang. Iguro Obanai's movements were elusive, suddenly accelerating to circle behind Arthur. The uniquely shaped Nichiren blade in his hand shot out like a venomous snake from its hole, aiming directly for the neck, ruthless and decisive, just as he always slayed demons. Wind breathing. 9th form, a Daiden typhoon. Tsunemi Shinazugawa soared into the sky, forcibly twisting his body midair, dozens of wild sword auras tearing through the air, covering Arthur from above. Explosive fiery impacts, unpredictable surprise attacks, and overwhelming, sharp slashes. The three had not exchanged a single word beforehand, yet their cooperation was seamless, unleashing a terrifying offensive capable of rivaling an upper-ranked demon. In contrast, Arthur, caught in the encirclement, remained composed, with only faint, flickering electric arcs gradually appearing on his body, making crackling sounds. Thunder style, light fang, triple bite. In an instant, a dazzling light burst forth, its momentum like a dragon, instantly scattering the sky-filling fire mist and roars. Uzui Tengen only felt a terrifying, powerful recoil, his arms instantly numb, and his Nichiren blade slipped from his grasp and flew out. Before the wind and serpent pillars could react, the straight-charging lightning bolt strangely turned midway, shooting straight into the sky, its sharp edge pointing directly at Tsunemi Shinazugawa. Iguro Obanai swung his blade through empty air, his heart tightening. Suddenly, he heard a suppressed grunt from above and quickly looked up. What met his eyes was a ferocious dragon head condensed from lightning, fangs bared, biting down from the sky. The thunder and lightning suddenly receded, and Arthur's figure reappeared in his original spot. He casually flicked his sword, shaking off a few lingering electric arcs, his tone still flat. "Now do you understand why I said you couldn't help?" Inside the courtyard, only deathly silence remained. The pillars watching were all utterly stunned and deeply shaken. In their eyes, everything had happened in a flash, and three battle-hardened pillar-level swordsmen were. Uzui Tengen's arms were still trembling slightly as he watched his Nichiren blade spiral into the small stream beside the courtyard, then he lowered his head dejectedly, silent. Tsunemi Shinazugawa lay on his back on the ground, his chest heaving violently, his face contorted with pain. He clutched his chest, opening his mouth several times as if to scream, but no sound came out. Arthur's previous strike with the flat of his blade had been so powerful that it had dislocated his internal organs, leaving him unable to catch his breath for a while. Iguro Obanai lightly touched the shallow cut on his Demon Slayer core uniform, the trace of a sword's pass. He silently sheathed his blade and walked back to join his observing companions without a word. Though the fight was brief, it had made him deeply realize the despair-inducing chasm in their strength. Arthur scanned the group and nodded slightly. "Very well, then today's spar ends here. I have some personal matters, so I'll take my leave. Mr. Arthur, please wait." Kagaya Ubuyashiki's slightly urgent voice rang out. His eyes were completely blind, and everything that had just happened had been quietly relayed by his wife and daughters beside him, only now did he learn of the breathtaking outcome. Unlike the pillars who were deep in self-doubt, Kagaya Ubuyashiki had long anticipated Arthur's power. Therefore, he was the calmest among them. He fumbled to adjust his body's orientation, and after confirming he was facing Arthur, he performed the most solemn dageza, bowing deeply. "Master, what are you doing? Please get up quickly. As our lord, how can you perform such a grand ray for another?" The pillars were greatly alarmed, rushing forward to help him up, but Kagaya Ubuyashiki stopped them with a calm yet firm voice. He remained prostrate on the ground and began to state his request. Most of the children who joined the Demon Slayer Corps carry deep-seated grudges, having lost loved ones or bid farewell to their dearest. His voice trembled slightly, yet every word was clear. They risked their lives, journeying on the path of demon slaying, only so that there might be fewer tragedies like theirs in the world, and for this, they trained diligently at all costs. Even if it's just a glimmer of hope, a little comfort, I implore you, fulfill their long-cherished wish." Arthur remained silent, and Kagaya Ubuyashiki continued to bow deeply, not rising. The pillars beside them lowered their heads, feeling a burning shame on their faces, utterly mortified and wishing they could disappear. The air seemed to solidify, and after an unknown period, Arthur finally spoke. His voice was calm, yet carried a detached and distant indifference, as if removed from the mundane world. "Isn't living well?" Arthur looked at the pillars, and the resolute and stubborn determination burning in their eyes was a silent answer. He couldn't fully comprehend this obsession, but he also couldn't dissuade them any further. Arthur felt a throbbing pain in his temples and raised a hand to rub them. "Do as you wish, since you possess such resolve, then train with all your might. Refine your breathing technique to its utmost, and you will have a chance to reach a certain state, similar to a mind's eye, which Tanjiro's father called the transparent world." Quote, "Once the transparent world is activated, it not only significantly enhances your perception, allowing you to anticipate moves and predict attacks, but also enables perfect control over every ounce of your strength, enough to give you the means to contend with upper-ranked demons." As soon as these words were spoken, all the pillars' expressions changed dramatically, and a clamor arose. Transparent world, such a state exists. We've been practicing breathing technique for years, yet we've never heard of it. Gyome Himahima softly chanted a Buddhist prayer, a mind's eye, indeed, Namu Amida Butsu. Kyojuro Rengoku's eyes flashed with brilliance, and he eagerly pressed on. Could it be that Mr. Arthur was able to easily defeat upper rank 3 precisely because of the transparent world? Arthur shook his head. My situation is special and cannot be used as a reference, but one thing is certain. Once you successfully activate the transparent world, your strength will undergo a qualitative change. At that time, even against an upper rank demon, you will have the power to fight, and even to corner and kill them. Upon hearing these words, Tsunemi Shinazugawa, who had been silent since his defeat, had a fierce flame rekindle in his eyes, and a savage smile spread across his lips. Ha, since it's been said to this extent, isn't it clear what needs to be done next? He suddenly leapt up from the ground, his entire body radiating fighting spirit. Train with my life. 1 month. Within 1 month, I will definitely open that transparent world. I will absolutely not be absent from the final battle with Muzan Kibutsuji. Tsunemi Shinazugawa's declaration was simple and crude, but it also roared out the unspoken thoughts of all the pillars present. That unwillingness, that longing, that determination to become stronger at all costs. Afterward, Kagaya Ubuyashiki officially issued new orders to all the pillars. Effective immediately, all Demon Slayer Corps members of Kino rank and above were to be assembled for a month-long, hellish intensive training camp. Each pillar would be responsible for specific training subjects based on their expertise. After assigning their respective training tasks, Kagaya Ubuyashiki announced a decision that would shake the entire Demon Slayer Corps. The establishment of the position of Demon Slayer Corps Commander. This position would have status and authority equal to that of the Master. Furthermore, in critical moments when the Master could not issue commands, the Commander would have supreme command over all members. The pillars' hearts were clear. Who else but Arthur could fill this supreme position? If it had been before today, perhaps some might have harbored doubts. But after personally experiencing or witnessing that unfathomable power, no one had any further objections. The motion passed unanimously. The fate of demons and demon slayers seemed to subtly shift at this moment. However, could a month-long hellish training truly allow the pillars to touch the legendary transparent world? To be continued. Thanks for watching.